You're listening to the Getting Salty Experience podcast.
And we are back. Welcome back, Leatherhead Nation, to the only podcast that brings the Firehouse Kitchen Table to you. Many imitators, no duplicators. We are the originators, not the duplicators. I stole that. I stole that from Kleehouse. Thanks, Chief. Yes. We missed you guys. We almost missed you guys. But listen, put the earphones on today. Turn up the hearing aids. You young fellas, get your pencils out, because this is going to be an entire show of old school tips of the day right here that just may save your lives. So listen up. We got two guys who've been to a couple of fires here and there. Maybe, I don't know. Let me just throw a couple of resumes at you, Roofie, even though we know them already. Captain Dennis Murphy, Engine 214, Ladder 111, Rescue 2, Ladder 113, Ladder 176, Squad 288. Just a couple of places he's been to. Then we got Frank Mollet over there. Frankie, Ladder 132, Rescue 1, Ladder 175, Squad 288. If you're looking for fire, these men have seen it, and they're going to make you schmott tonight. But before we get to that, I want to know how you doing, Ruffy. You all right? You good? You shaved the beard?
The face. I shaved it off.
Clean shaven. Look at that.
This is very disturbing. It's very odd to me. I like the when you got your little what's it like, the
Gabagol?
The Gabagol.
Gabagol.
Nice.
The Gabagol. What's the matter with you?
I don't know, man. I don't know. What do I know?
Want to thank Hank for using the Just for Men. He's got it all under control there tonight. Right? Look at it. Looking nice.
Cap's got a good head too. He's looking good too.
It does.
Cap.
Yeah, but Hank's got it all brown. If you go out in the rain, that won't run, will it? You know, right?
Come on, Frank.
Oh, shit.
Put this stuff in your hair. Oh,
I don't need it.
Don't worry about it.
There's none there, bro.
There it is.
All right, Pete, but before we dive into this wealth of information that we're going to get to, why don't you give us a little shameless plug that you got over there?
Oh, of course, guys. You guys all know this already, though. We are brought to you by GettingSaltyApparel.com. Look at that T-shirt and that tumbler that our boy Kubies is drinking there and wearing. I mean, that is just some of the fine apparel. Captain Murphy's even got one. So if you want to be a living legend like Captain Murphy or Coobs, buy yourself
a lucky strike.
Get yourself a lucky strike and a tumbler over at GettingSaltyApparel.com. But guys, also, if you do want to support us, and we really do appreciate it, hit us up in the super chats. It's awfully kind of you guys when you do support us there. But also, if you have a question that absolutely positively has to be answered tonight by these two legends of the FDNY, then hit us up in the super chat as well. We appreciate it, and thank you. Boom.
All right, Captain Murphy, senior dude Hank Mollet, welcome back to the show. Let's dive right in.
Nice, Kev.
All right, Cap, take it away. Start us off here. We're going to talk about building constructions, right? If we have some time, maybe we'll talk about some roof operations and
if we get to that, that'll be great. But there are some places we can plug that in along the way. A little bit at the beginning, just where we got this from was I did a project when I first got promoted for the FDNY, and that all it was an awareness class on building construction. So what I've done is just update it, and I'm going to bring it to you a little bit. It's the typical PowerPoint thing, but hopefully, what I always learned as an instructor, what I was told by the guys that broke me in, and what I told guys when I trained instructors is, you make PowerPoint or visual aids, pictures are just that. They're aids. It's what the experience that the guys that are delivering that can deliver to you, So hopefully you'll get a little something out of that. There's a little bit of experience here. There's a lot to talk about. You can take it to whatever level you want. But the guys told Hank and I to try to keep it, deliver it like a firehouse kitchen drill. And that's what we're going to try to do. Keep it informal. We're just going to, we're going to give you the information, especially for the young guys. The old salts know this. A lot of this, you may see a fact or two that's surprising or that's new. But the young guys, I'm always amazed right now, whether it was as an instructor or whether it's just reading publications, how many people don't have a good education as far as building construction and more than likely not knowing every different type of building construction, but what's dangerous, what's going to hurt you. We were just talking before this started about you're driving around your town, wherever you live, and you see something. It's so easy now to bring it back to the kitchen table. We've all got a camera in our pocket. Every one of us is riding around with one of these. All right. If you don't know what you're looking at, if you think it looks funky, if it's different, if it's, you're not sure.
It probably is.
It probably is. So photograph it and bring it back to the firehouse and let the senior guys, the old heads, take a look at it and let them know what and they'll let you know what to think about it, and they'll pass it on, So that's the whole idea about what we're going to talk about.
Because once it's covered up, you can't
it's gone.
find it. It's gone.
It's gone, especially if it's in a private dwelling or something. Forget it. You're never going to get to see it, unless you have a very good relationship with the developers or the owners of the buildings, and that varies. We all know there's some people that'll let you look at everything, and there's other people that get off my property.
Yeah, and if they're cutting corners, they're going to try to get that buttoned up quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And you'll see that.
Yeah. Speaking of old heads, we got Hank right here. Hank, I love you. I love you.
He lobbed that one right up for you there, cool.
I'm a little frisky tonight.
Yeah, I see that. Well, hello, all my friends and brothers and sisters out there in Leatherhead Nation. You have the best right here in Captain Murphy. I'm just going to be like the color commentator tonight. So, buckle your seatbelts there and enjoy, because there is a lot of information that's going to come out tonight. And like I said, some of this stuff could save your life or save someone else's life out there on the fire ground. So away we go.
All right. And Pete's going to earn his money
Pete.
tonight.
I'm ready.
Yeah, you're going to hear a lot of next slide. That's the only way we could do this. So.
Well, you tell me where you want to start, Cap, and we'll rock this thing out, man.
Just go to number 2. Number 3.
Number three. This is a good one.
All right, we're going to dedicate this to my old boss, my first captain in the truck, Tom Brennan, and this is, he presented for years at FDIC. He wrote random thoughts in the back of fire engineering for over a decade. Just a great man, a great educator, and somebody who was a mentor to me and the whole fire service at that. So dedicated to Tommy Truck.
And for those who are listening, I just want to read this. Obviously, you can never learn too much about a job that can kill you. Coming from Tommy Brennan there, so it ain't that the truth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just there are so many things, especially you start preparing something like this, you start rereading old stuff that you put it away, but it's you dust it off and you go, oh gee, I forgot about that. And so many of these incidents are so tragic, and it's just if information that you can pass along, even in your own firehouse, the senior men to the junior guys, it can save your life, especially if you had never heard it before. So next slide. Okay, just the different types of buildings that are out there. There's fireproof, non-fireproof, ordinary construction. And they have different NFPA classifications. We used to have a different building code in the city, and we'll go through them one at a time. So next slide, Pete. We'll move past this.
Yep, you got it.
Different ratings. This is a good example of a fireproof building. Many different types of these, many different occupancies. Commercial, residential, fire. The whole building is fire resistant. The building does not add anything to the fire load. In New York, we used to call these fireproof because the original buildings at the turn of the last century, in the late 1800s and in the early 1900s, they were revolutionary because you could build higher buildings now because they were termed fireproof. All right, and in New York, it's considered a 4-hour rating. They actually subdivide that category a little bit. But the whole building is fire resistant, and there's, we deal with them all the time in housing projects, high-rise buildings, commercial buildings, residential buildings, and just go to the next slide, Pete. This is another type of building. I put this in. I used to work at this place at Macy's, Herald Square. And most people have been there at one time or another. Most people come to New York and they go to Macy's. And this building is an example of what we used to call in New York a Class 2. It has a 3-hour rating. But one of the things that's when I did this project, one of the things that I did was Brian Hickey and I went to see, and Brian Hickey was the captain of Rescue 4 on 9/11. We got promoted together. We went to see Chief Vincent Dunn, who's written all of our high-rise books, our books on building construction. I have them here. We used to have to study these for promotion. But one of the things I was not familiar with was what we considered in New York Class 2 buildings, which these buildings with 3-hour ratings. I didn't have much experience in them. And he took us to two, Brian and I took us to two buildings in Manhattan, the Ansonia Hotel, which I'm sure Hank has been in a million times, and Macy's Herald Square. 13, 14 years later, I'm the fire safety manager in Macy's Herald Square on the evening shift, working with a whole bunch of retired New York City firefighters, New Jersey firefighters, as they basically gutted this entire side of the building, this entire facility from top to bottom in stages. And we saw firsthand what a Class 2 building was, because these are the buildings that they tell you about have cast iron columns.
Right.
Now, steel skeletons is what we deal with the most of them, or reinforced concrete. But cast iron columns have one unique feature that firefighters have to be very aware of. What's that feature? Anybody know? Right. Cast iron isn't steel, so it's much older technology. And these are the buildings that they talk about, that if you hit them with a cold stream of water after they've been heated, these columns can shatter and break. This entire building, from the subcellar to the 10th floor, is cast iron.
Holy
cast iron columns. Yeah.
Right.
So
Do you know what year that was prevalent in the building of
the early 1900s, the very late 1800s and the early 1900s. The other building that's attached to this building was built in the early 1920s and is a normal, what we would consider, like the building in the previous slide, a fireproof building.
Right.
And that's actually, I've been around in different states, Hank. Just quick, they have a lot of the old towns that I go through. When I go hunting or whatever, they have these cast iron, old style building construction. So those guys, they're just old store, styles or lofts or whatever.
Right, and it also said downtown, all the lofts are all cast iron.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was in Rescue 1, one of the things we found out when they were demoing one of those buildings was that the cast iron columns, it's not made like in a car factory where everything's perfect. They were cast, I guess, back in the old days, where they were, however they did the cast, but they were not symmetrical. So if they weren't setting the cast exactly right, you could have one side of the cast might have been
thicker or thinner,
and the other side could have been a 1/4 inch. So that's an area that could fail very rapidly if it's heated and then hit with the lines. So you have to be aware of that.
When I worked for Con Ed, Hank, a lot of the big mains that we would use were cast iron, and some big enough you could almost walk in. That's how big some of the mains were that we would work on, and we would use a pressure tool that would just snap it, crack it, a crack around it, and then we would just bash it with a sledgehammer, and the thing would just break like that. But when you would open it, you'd be able to see it. You would look around the rim, and some of it would be thick like this, and then some areas would be like really thin.
Right.
So now think of those are the columns that's holding up the floor above and the floor above. So if one
especially if that was done on Friday afternoon, you know what I mean?
Hey, Jimmy, you get that thing all the way to fuck around? Oh, not right, I'll catch you. Don't worry.
It's looking good to me, laddie. It looks good.
It looks good over here.
Wrap it up, would you?
It's Friday.
The other thing with that particular building that was interesting was the concrete in it was formed in what's called cinder arch. Like, in other words, it was all in an arch. It looked like chicken wire that was held together with. And there's a lot of discussion in the engineering community about how that, I think they call it legacy or archaic concrete, is going to behave in a fire. You and I have never heard any of it, but they're talking about it. 100-year-old, or in this case, what would it be? It would be a 120-year-old building. If it does suffer a serious fire, how is that concrete going to behave? After it's cured out all those years and stuff, because it's not like the concrete that we see today. It's very different. So. But anyway, the other thing with Macy's, right, Hank, is there was a fatal fire there in 1978.
79, I think, wasn't it?
Was it 79? Yeah, I have it right here. Yeah.
79.
Yeah, go to yes. Actually, it was June 14th of 79. Go to the next slide, Pete.
Okay.
Stand by. Oh, and coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, June 14th, 1979. A firefighter from 24 truck, Walter Smith, was killed on the 5th floor. I remember when they demoed that floor, there was a bunch of us that were interested in seeing what that looked like after, in other words, after the fire, they had refinished everything on that floor. We were curious to see it. It had just been covered up. The walls still were covered with soot. The elevator banks were blanked off on that floor.
Shit.
Yeah, there was still hand mark, not from anybody from the fire, but there were, guys rubbing up against it and stuff. It was pretty interesting to see it. And now it's been redone again.
Was he the one who got lost?
Yeah, he got separated from the officer in 24 truck. I just reread the report, and they went in. The sprinklers had been shut down. Okay, on that floor, the fire department had been notified from what it said in the article. So they were covered. Macy's was covered. The only thing that would happen today, they'd have to post a fire watch there.
Right.
If that happened today, but that wasn't in place at that time. And they went in to the fire, which was in the back. There's a lot of storage rooms on those floors. You don't notice them, but they're off against the exterior walls, and the fire was in one of those rooms. But one of the things I always remember was the officer in 24 truck was quoted as saying he could see the TVs on the other side of the floor, and they're big floors. We're talking about 150 to 200 feet away when they initially came in.
And ceilings like 8 feet high? Don't you have real high?
Exactly.
Ceilings?
That was one of the other takeaways of this. After this, we wound up with search ropes. We didn't have search ropes at that time. And what happened when they had to get out, the place started to flash over. When they had to get out, firefighter Smith, I believe, broke away from his officer, and during the flashover, and they got separated. And they tried getting them, and they couldn't. They were all getting burnt. They had to get out. And my captain in 111 later on, Bob Kilkenny, was a covering lieutenant in 65 Engine. When they talk about the officer in 65 Engine in that report, it's Bob Kilkenny. And he got burnt. When you go through the 2 buildings at Macy's, there's a set of sliding fireproof self-closing doors. On one side, when you go around the elevator banks and the escalator enclosures, there's a fireproof self-closing door that slides, and there's another one that drops like a roll-down gate. That's exactly what it is, a roll-down gate with a fusible link, and it comes down. And when we were there, we were always having to get people to move stuff because they were always blocking them. But Bob Kilkenny went in and, to lead the way for his guys, and the vertical roll down, they had opened the sliding roll down, sliding self-closing door. They had opened that. But then the vertical one came down.
Oh my
fused
God!
And came down and cut him off from his guys.
Oh my goodness!
Now their lieutenant is trapped. It's just, and I think at this later on they wound up. They used a stang on the fire floor and stuff. Yeah. It was real bad, but it can just show you how bad things can get in a fireproof building, and it also shows you the human element that everything goes wrong. It's Murphy's Law, right? Oh yeah, we got a fire. Yep, we show up. We got a fire. There's nobody on scene to handle it. There's nobody can take us where it is. And we wind up with a condition where we have no operating sprinklers. And I think they got water into the sprinklers. And then what happened was, and there was a little bit of question there. I remember guys talking about that. I don't know if it's the case, but in other words, there's over 300 heads fused now. And now you start water. Multiple engine companies start water. What happens when they start water? They push all that air out in front of it. Yeah, you got 300 heads, but you got all that air coming out ahead of it because the system is dry now, Oh. So I don't know, obviously I wasn't there, so I don't know. But it's just good, big complex floor area, like Hank said, a high ceiling, impaired sprinkler system.
I remember guys talking about those types of big areas. Again, take it for what it's worth. I mean, but if you ever got jammed up, if you didn't have your search rope in a scenario like that, and you walk in and it goes lights out. Look for the walkway, like for the linoleum floor as opposed to the rug, right? Something like that is going to kind of keep you at least going towards some type of it. If you got no shot, at least you got some shot as opposed to being on the rug or where the clothes is or something like that.
Jay Jonas, the chief up in the Bronx there, he wrote a great review of this fire recently in that newsletter that he sent out. Very good, very complete. This is also a suspicious fire, which a lot of people forget. Wasn't necessarily declared arson, but there had been a series of arson fires in department stores in New York at that time. So, whether one had anything to do with the other, I don't know. But again, fireproof buildings, you think nothing's going to go wrong here. It's got a full sprinkler system. What can go wrong? I mean, look at Vandalia Avenue, another fireproof building where we lost 3 firefighters in a residential fireproof building. Again, an impaired sprinkler system that was probably impaired for 20 years that nobody even knew about. It's you go in there on inspection, you're never going to check that. You're not going to check every section valve in a sprinkler system or a standpipe. There's no way.
And same with Schaumburg, a fire I had talked about on one of these podcasts last year. Same thing. The up on 110th Street where no firefighter deaths but 7 civilians, and they were working on the sprinklers. They had it shut down, and they left for the weekend, and the system wasn't in a state where it could be turned back on, and they had the fire in the compact chute, no sprinklers, and we went right up and ended up top 3 floors going, killing 7 civilians. So
yeah.
They're fireproof when everything that's in them is supposed to be working the way it is,
Right. And all these systems have to work together.
Right.
Correct.
That Murphy fella, he shows up though.
Yeah. Well, there he is right there.
Yeah.
Oh, not that Murphy.
Oh, different Murphy.
That's the good Murphy.
Yeah.
Right.
And
All right,
when you
Pete.
said that, they did actually use a stank, because when I went to one of my senior guys, Mr. Riley, was at that fire. And I remember him saying in the beginning that you could actually walk around on the floor. The smoke was stratifying, but the ceilings were so high. It kind of it reminded me of like when you're in the flashover simulators, when everything's rolling over the ceiling, and then all of a sudden, boom, it went. And it got to the point where they ended up taking a stang off one of the engine companies and feeding it, I think, with 2.5s, and operated that to try to knock this fire down. So, it was a pretty hairy situation.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it definitely shows what can happen in these buildings, no doubt about it. All right, Pete.
All right. Where we heading?
Next one. Yeah, this is the same fire. Again, that's another thing with high-rise buildings. Not a lot of smoke showing initially. This is the 2 different sides of the fire. This is down the picture to the left is down 34th Street from 7th Avenue, and the picture on the right is looking south on 7th Avenue from like 35th
That's how
Street.
much smoke is showing there. Holy.
Yeah, and that that's the 5th floor, but we got to remember in Macy's is they have a mezzanine level like right here, like right above the Macy's sign there. There's an extra floor there. If you go in there, it's not counted as a floor, so it's actually the 6th floor. Yeah, just really difficult. And you look at that. I don't know what point that picture was taken, but again, a firefighter loses his life at this. So it just shows anything can happen. Okay, move on, Pete.
Moving on.
We're going to move through these kind of quick, okay? Class 3 non-fireproof. Hank has a very good point on this particular picture. But this is what we in New York City do a lot of our bread and butter firefighting in. So this is normally, masonry walls, wood structural members, and these are found throughout the city. The whole building is flammable. There's a lot of voids. I have a slide with a lot of the construction hazards and issues on that, but go ahead, Hank. You had a couple of really good points.
Well, yeah, just for the younger firefighters out there, when you see this, and this is not 100% of the time, but 98 to 99% of the time, you pull up and you see fire escapes on the front of the building. What does that tell you? Well, that tells you that building probably is not. In New York, we call them railroad flats. I know in other parts of the country they have other names for them, but what a railroad flat was, where the apartment runs from the front of the building to the rear of the building. So I know if we pull, in New York, if you pull up to a building with fire escapes out front, that's telling you they're not railroad flats. So you have front apartments, and now it's divided, and you have rear apartments because you're going to have fire escapes in the rear also. So that's going to, there's a lot of information there for the OV, which way he's going. Is the fire, if it's a flat, it could be fire front to rear. If it's not a flat, it might be isolated to the front apartment or the rear apartment. So just pulling up right there and seeing that fire escape should be telling you a story.
And you could tell that's the front of the building because the fire escapes aren't going to the roof.
Yeah,
correct.
Look, you look at the bottom of the picture. You see that awning, and those create big problems too. If you can just see the awning at the bottom of the picture with the gooseneck ladder, not the gooseneck, the drop ladder going through it. Those are a big problem in urban areas too, with creating access to getting portable ladders up and to getting them into the windows and getting them in at a safe angle too. That's a problem. Getting to the roof at these buildings. If it's multiple buildings, like you see here, it might be more than one address here. You can go up the adjacent building. You can take the aerial ladder. You can go up a rear fire escape. But again, you got to get to the roof, and you got to get to the roof quickly. That's a really important point.
Right. Another thing with fire escapes, as we're talking about it, is I know with FDNY and even where I was a volley, you don't trust the drop ladders. Either that or even the counterbalance ones that swing down. You're gonna take your portable ladders and ladder each side of that second floor landing to get the people down. And plus having two ladders up makes it easier. If you got a lot of people coming down the fire escapes, they can go side to side. You have somebody directing traffic there. It's easy to get them down.
Right. Yeah. A lot of, for the young guys or guys in areas don't have a lot of these buildings, but maybe you have a few or your neighboring jurisdiction has them. These fire escapes, which are always empty every time you go past them, can become really crowded at a real serious fire, So again, what we used to call class 3, NFPA type 3, ordinary construction. Again, this is just one type. There's some multiple dwelling. If you go to the next slide,
I think it's, we've got a couple of pictures of these.
Same thing. Some of the again, we got these all throughout the country, but the building burns. The buildings, wood structural members burn. A lot of fires in concealed spaces, and you get rapid fire spread. Okay, go move on to the next. This is a great slide, which we'd like to take a minute on. This was taken by my friend Brian Hickey, who was killed on 9/11. It was right across the street from Rescue 4. He took this when he was a fireman in Rescue 4 and later became the captain of Rescue 4. But we were talking about this last night. And, you look at this, everything in this picture is a class 3 building. The apartment buildings in the back are class 3 ordinary constructed buildings. You can tell they're fireproof, because they're non-fireproof rather, because they have fire escapes, And you can also tell, if you can see close enough, you can see it just barely. They have cockloft vents. And cockloft vents are little vents that let air flow through the
look
cockloft.
under the P on payer. If you can zoom in, there's a little vent above that top window there.
10-4. Let me see if I can pull it up. I'm in a little
Cap.
program here.
Yeah, no problem.
See that little, you guys see that over there?
Right above that window all the way to the left on the building on the right.
Under the P.
On the right. Under the P.
Right.
Yeah. That's a cockloft vent. So, and then the building in the front is a regular row of stores, taxpayer, ordinary construction. Again, wood structural members, steel beams that you'll see everywhere. Everybody's got.
So if you got smoke coming out of that vent, it's probably going to be good and then bad.
Look how much
it's good because you're probably going to do a lot of work, but it's going to be bad because you're probably going to lose the whole building.
Oh gosh.
The weight on that roof. Look at all those dishes on the top of that roof too, man.
Yeah, that's one of the points that Brian used to always make about that, because that was at the time when he took this picture, it was a sports bar in there that was fairly new. In other words, these satellite dishes were a new thing, and that was one of the points he always made when he talked about this slide, was the fact that look at the additional weight, that's on the roof now with this, which is a very true point.
Right.
There's a lot of buildings on Queens Boulevard with that ornate.
Yeah, they were built around the same time.
Yeah, probably right.
Right, but to clarify for the guy, some of the younger firefighters out there, like with this one-story taxpayer, on this, most likely it's going to be a common cockloft, and you're not going to see vents in this type of even though it does have a cockloft. I can't recall seeing vents in like these one-story. Whereas in the apartment houses with the multiple stories, that was always the telltale. Like we showed, there's the one vent there, but actually, you're going to see along the whole whatever exposure side, you might see 2, 3, or 4 of those vents up there,
right?
And that's letting you know that it is a non-fireproof building,
right? Yeah, well, I was telling the guys earlier, we used to have fairly modern, which was the thing that used to trip everybody up. Non-fireproof buildings on Gates Avenue in 111's response area. And I don't remember who came up with it. It might have been Bobby Austin or somebody. They used to call them phony projects because they were very modern looking buildings, which tend to be fireproof, right? but they had what looked like a party wall balcony, but it was actually hid the fire escape, which was behind them. So they were actually buildings of ordinary construction. Very easy to miss. Very easy to miss. And if it wasn't your response area, you were there as a relocator or something.
Right. That's when it's.
Yeah, that's where you could really have a problem.
Okay. Just one more point. Actually, can we go back to the last slide, number 9?
That's a 290 job.
That is 290 job. Yeah, no, yeah.
So let me
didn't do good there.
Guys, with my consortium there, you would agree that this is some type, could we consider this a tenement, maybe a new law tenement?
Yeah, more than likely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so again, I know with New York, and I'm sure other parts of the country, knowing your buildings, new law tenements, old law tenements, is there a difference? What makes the difference? Yeah. Okay, well, as far as I know, you had an old law tenement, your first floor was, into the basement, that was wood joists, wood flooring, and your stairways had wood risers, wood treads. Okay. The new law tenement, you had a poured concrete floor on the first floor, and then you had metal risers and metal treads. Now, why is that important to know? Well, if you got a good basement fire or you got a fire burn on any floor, you have potential for collapse. And I know from personal experience, when I was in 132, we had a third alarm. It went to a third alarm next to 105's quarters in one winter time. Reported kids trapped up above, and I had the irons, and one of my buddies from 280, he had the detail. He was the can man, and we were second due. I started going up the stairs. Fire was burning below, and it was an old law. It had weakened the treads and the riser, and I ended up going through the stairs. Not fully, but like to my waist, and to the number on my knee. So just knowing these points in your areas, and again, we're talking about building construction. There's a difference there, but to me, that's an important difference to know. And you need to know if those type of buildings are in your areas.
Yep, exactly. And one other thing, it just jumped out at me. I'm looking at the fire escapes again. Is these fire escapes are on what we would call the street side of the building, right? So what's the difference between these fire escapes and the ones that we would find in the rear, let's say?
Gooseneck
ladder,
Gooseneck.
right.
Okay.
Right. So the street side fire escapes generally don't terminate at roof level. The fire escapes in the rear generally have a gooseneck that goes up to the roof level. So that's an important thing if the roof man is getting jammed up and is looking for additional ways to get on or off the roof,
And it's always a good idea if you're going to use that gooseneck to give it a few good tugs. Because when I used to have I had a presentation, I had 2 or 3 pictures, different buildings with the gooseneck ladder hanging, halfway off.
Shit.
Yeah.
You'd be climbing it, doing the John Belushi. So,
I'm out on that.
You got to remember these things. Right.
Doing the John Belushi. Nice.
They're metal. If they're not maintained, with painted and stuff, and a lot of these landlords and stuff, they're not putting a lot of money into maintaining these things. Now, like Dennis said, they start getting overloaded. We've had cases where fire escapes have even collapsed off of buildings.
Yeah.
So
a friend of mine who I took the test with. Remember I told you guys about when I got on the job. Everybody in my group going through the test was named Murphy because they did it in alphabetical order. So one of the guys I dropped off.
Murphy on the fire.
I dropped off. He's from Ohio. This guy is from Ohio, right? And I go, how are you going to get on the job? You got to be a New York resident, He goes, I'll work on that when I come to it, So I let him use my address. He gets on the job.
Allegedly.
He gets on the job. Well, it's forever, He gets on the job. The investigator came and talked to my mother, who can't tell a lie. She tells him everything, about the guy.
No.
Yeah, and she gives him a cup of tea, and he gets on the job, So anyway, he's on the job. He's up in the Bronx. It's not a class 3 or type 3 building. It's getting to Hank's point. He's going up a gooseneck ladder to clear a spark arrestor in the projects across from. He was in 60 engine and 17 truck. I guess he's working in the truck, and he's cleaning out the spark arrestor up on the roof. And the gooseneck ladder gives away and John Murphy takes a tremendous tumble and almost goes off the side of the building. Wow. And I believe that was it for him. I never saw him again after that. After that, I never spoke to him.
Murphy's Law doesn't show up for Murphy's.
That's not true. That's not true.
Well, yeah, that's never gonna happen.
I'm living.
I was just
proof
going
of
to say,
that.
Cap, you have proof of that. It's for sure.
You know why that's never gonna happen to me, right, Hank? Because I'm never a stranger to giving it a few good tugs. You know what I mean?
Boom.
Both hands, huh?
Yeah, man, I'll go two-handed.
Just the facts, man.
Just the facts, man.
All right, where are we headed to?
Go to slide.
13. Lucky 13.
Lucky 13.
Hey, that's my lucky number. Boom.
Okay, just to wrap up on these Class 3 buildings, masonry wooden joist buildings, they tend to be older buildings, masonry walls, wood joists. You see the building here in this picture. This is from last month in Jackson Heights. This was an invitational. What did this go to? Like a fifth alarm? Very tough fire. 8 alarms, fully occupied, going stem to stern. On the top floor. So again, these buildings are still out there. They're still with us. They're not going anywhere. They still have all of the construction features that made them hazardous in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And they're here again to challenge this generation. They're still with us to challenge this generation of firefighters. We didn't even talk about parapets, concealed voids. The frame, the eye joists, the eye beams that go up, they create a channel for fire spread vertically, and then it terminates in the cockloft. And the cocklofts are huge in these buildings, enormous.
Yeah, some of them are a few feet.
This is what actually somebody in the chats here, Rob, is saying regarding the cockloft vent. Some taxpayers may have an opening for water runoff off the roof. How can you tell the vent versus the gutter water runoff so as to not make a mistake at a non-fireproof building?
Talking about a scupper, right?
Yeah, the scupper, right.
Right.
Usually a rain runoff gutter will have some type of scupper, like a, you have where your the leaders come down on your house. You'll have something where the water will run off of, where with the the cockloft vents,
flat, usually flush. It's usually flush.
Yeah, flush. You might see a screen in it. You might,
you'll almost never see anything in front, right?
Well, on a vent, you might have a little bit of an angle on the top of the vent, whereas with the water gutter, you're not going to see that. It's usually open, or just open, or it'll have some type of thing on the bottom, to shed the water.
Yeah, sometimes they're half round on the bottom, the scuppers, right? So the water can run off. So
the older ones might. The newer ones, it could be just a rectangular opening, but it's from a distance it might be hard to tell. But that's the only thing that I could tell. I was asking the question is, generally if it's a vent, you might have a little bit of a top piece coming out. You might see a screen in it to keep birds or whatever from getting in there. And with the the water gutter, it's just going to be open and might have some type of a lip on the bottom to shed water. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, and a lot of times those are covered over with signs and other ornamental additions to the outside of the building too.
But you know what? While we have this picture up, I guess Dennis, we consider this like either a U or an H type.
Yeah, I think it was like an E shape. This building, if I remember, I saw a shot. They have the drone now, and that's great. At first I thought, just another piece of useless technology. But you know what? You're looking at that if you don't think about it from our end of it, the like crawling down the hallway end of it. You think about it from the chief's point of view. It really does give you a real time sense of what's going on. When they put that thing up.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because a couple of episodes ago, our hosts here and a few others were doing a good job of playing down trench cuts, and I know I can't agree with that 100%. I know that in my time on the job, I can think of probably 8 to 10 times where trench cuts were done where they were effective. But again,
I can remember times that they didn't work. Don't get me wrong, and where I didn't see them used most of the time effectively was when I first got on the job. Guys were throwing them in at row frames, and it was like a 50-50 thing whether they got ahead of it or not. But I can even at the end of my career, one of the most satisfying jobs I had in 288 was in Flushing. We wound up on the roof. We changed over John DiRienzo was driving. We changed over the forcible entry saw to a wood saw. We went up and there was like two trucks on the roof. The chief sent the whole company to the roof. It was Chief Messbauer in the 14th. And it worked like a charm. Actually, we cut the first one. It got past us. We put inspection holes in front and behind. It came back. I remember Welty was working. I'm trying to think of who else was there. I think Sweeney.
Right?
I think Matt Neary. And when we came down, the chief gave me a hug, so I was like, I think we did good. And that was the last time I think I used the trench cut that it really worked. But again, apartment houses tend to lend themselves to that because you can use the geography up there, especially the right, exactly, to use for boundaries, so you don't have to make as much of a trench cut.
The problem is with those, right, Cap, has always been we try to get too close to the fire to save the most, right? So
you got to try to save the wing.
Just go for the wing. If you have an E, go all the way to the last one, cut the trench, and give up the middle, because if you try and it's I've seen it quite a few times where we try and cut it so close to save the most, and by that time it's already gone.
It's a lot of moving parts for a trench cut.
No doubt about it.
I hear guys, out here on Long Island talk about, we dropped the trench cut, and I'm like, you don't have any freaking idea. You know what I'm saying? Because you think about what you've got to do.
Coordination that is entailed with that.
You've got to have a crew on the roof.
Underneath.
You've got to have a crew underneath. Right. You've got to have hose lines underneath. Preferably a hose line on the roof too, which is a very good idea. Okay, and now you got to cut the thing. You got to time it. It gets to those little inspection holes. Pull it. You got to be able to pull it simultaneously as fast as possible. So you need enough guys up there to do that, and the ceiling's got to come down at the same time underneath with a hose line in place. That's a lot of moving parts to be in place at one time. So
but it can be done.
It can be done. And you know what? Those guys in the 70s and the 80s could do it.
Right. I mean, it can be done now. It's just if you have the right guys leading. You have the guy on the top on the roof that's knowledgeable. And a guy, an officer down below.
Exactly.
Right.
I would say wherever you're going to make it, take 10 steps back.
I mean,
whatever you pick.
It's not an offensive tactic. It's a defensive tactic.
Right.
But what you're saying, Louis, is correct. You're kind of saying, look, we got a real heavy fire going top floor into the cock loft. But we got to stop it. And if they're not making progress on it, well, then, like you say, we're going to go far enough where we're giving up this portion of real estate, but we're stopping it right here.
For the reason exactly what the captain just said, because it takes so much effort to get – you can't just cut a trench and think, everything's going to be hunky-dory because of all the stuff the captain just said. Obviously, we all know that.
It's like – I'm sorry. Go ahead, Hank.
No, go ahead.
It's like in the engine, sometimes it's not that satisfying to do it, but it's like in the engine where you get your first do at a rocking fire, and the chief tells you to protect the exposure. It sucks. It sucks. Like, there's no other way to put it. It sucks. All right.
What?
But you just saved the day. You just saved the day because it didn't. John Norman talks about that in like the first edition of his book. He talks about a fire, I think, in Long Beach, out here on the island. And a fire's in a house and it spreads to the next house, It's going for a lumber yards at the end of the block. And finally, they just give up like one house in the middle and they take the whole, and they protect the exposures, because when you look at the possibility of the loss, it's so much bigger than
chasing. You just
exactly.
You
can't get ahead. You got to get ahead of it, So but it's the same thing on the roof. Sometimes it's just I don't want to do that, but you got to do it.
Think about giving up a house or two houses to go all the way down, right? I mean, all of those blocks, right? What was it, Pine Street? Pine Street. I mean, again, nobody was really thinking, just to try and keep catching up with it. By the time you get there, set up, it's gone,
And listen, we're very we're prideful people. I can remember a fire in a bunch of row frames in Brooklyn. When I was in 176, and Chief Iovino was in the 4-4. Chief Iovolo in the 4-4. Great guy. We all loved him. And go in, and I'm in the truck. So we go upstairs, fire. We're pulling ceilings, hooking ceilings, and I come out like an hour later, and the whole row is gone. The whole block is gone. And I'm going, and the chief looks at me, and I go, I was my fire out. So sometimes you gotta think a little bit beyond yourself. You got to think a little bit ahead. And that's what the Chiefs get paid for. That really is. They got to make those decisions.
When that tactic doesn't work.
Well, when it's your house?
Louis the first new officer. Hey, Chief, my radio was I
didn't hear you. What? Yeah, get out to the exposure. Chief, I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Well, we knew this was going to happen. We're going to go off on tangents and stuff, but that's what this is for.
It's good.
A kitchen drill, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Good. You got to have a little ball breaking at the kitchen table.
I'm getting a little toasty right now. I'm toasty.
Oh, boy.
Go to 14, Pete.
You got it.
All right, this is
111 job, right?
No, this is 111 was definitely there. I think they're in this picture, but
is this 120?
Yeah, it's definitely 120. It's Pitkin Avenue.
Was...
It's definitely 120 area. 176 is in it. But this fire just got out of control real fast. It was everything upstairs was bricked up. So all those buildings you've been there, Lou, on Pitkin Avenue.
Yeah, scary.
Freaking disaster.
Yeah, that's scary.
But again, all those things from that slide a couple of minutes ago with all the text in it, all the words, that's all going on right here. Fire traveling up concealed spaces, common cockloft, a lot of fire spread. So, all right, let's move on to the next one. It's just an example of what can go wrong. And everybody's got these buildings, Again, this is a real good photo that Joe Sperber took down at the Four Towns and gave it to us at the Nassau Fire Academy. This is just a great picture of a row of stores that could be in any town USA. And, this is what happens when you lose it. It's gets into that common cockloft, and off it goes to the races right down the row. And there's a lot of things to be careful of here. They got towel ladder spotted, which is great. You got parapet walls you got to be careful of, collapse zones, all of that. So again, very manpower and equipment intensive operations for sure.
You know what? I always felt like those types of buildings, the commercial, Hank, I know we've had a couple of those where you have different levels of ceiling, right? You have the original ceiling, then you have two ceiling, another ceiling, drop ceiling below that. And the same thing with the flooring. I mean, I remember, Hank, we had the job in the YMCA. Was it the YMCA where they had levels of flooring? So the fire was like was in the floor, and we were cutting stuff, I remember, and just trying to look for the fire. So those types of buildings always have that weird stuff.
Was that the one where they had a bowling alley on the second floor?
Yes, that was the one. Yes.
Right, and with the teeth, that wood they use for the lanes is like rock, and it was just dull in the saw blades.
Right. We couldn't even cut it.
Lay it in. You cut like a couple of feet, and then it was, it would do nothing. I think didn't that go like a fourth alarm?
Fifth alarm.
You didn't get a game or two in, or what? What happened?
I tried.
Yeah, they weren't playing over there. But I remember that.
I remember that. I just retired. I remember that fire with that looked like it was a bitch because it just kept going on and on and on. Right?
I always felt like these types of building, they always have a lot of voids, either in the flooring or in the ceiling.
Right? Didn't we lose our saw in that job too?
I wasn't working for that, Cap.
I don't know. A quick funny story about that fire. Like you said, it went to like a fifth alarm. So I think we're at a third alarm now. It's like going at a third, and we're on that second floor. It's right, and we're trying. It's pushing, and we're trying to expose some fire. We know it's there, but we can't get these lanes cut or anything. And at that time, I think allegedly, I might have had like some type of breathing device on or something. And at one point, I'm sitting there working this store, trying. There's not too many people around, a couple of guys, and I feel an arm on my shoulder, and like I turn, and I'm with the light, I'm looking, and I'm not going to mention the name, but it happened to be one of my old captains from Rescue 1, who was now a chief, and he was the chief of safety. So I turned with this alternate breathing.
Oh boy!
Here in the headlight.
Swinging a miss, he struck him out.
He leans down. He says, just get the damn thing open. And they walked away. That was the end
I
of it.
remember we cut the hole. It was so smoky, that job. You remember? We cut the hole like towards the windows to just try and get some vent because it was so bad. Take a beating in there. Tell me you took a beating, I'll give you a beating.
So, all right. Well, back to learning, you know.
Okay, go to the next one, Pete.
You got it, boss.
All right, we're moving on to type 5, which is now this changes a little bit. The NFPA types change their numbers a little bit. NFPA type 5, probably the most common. We're not going to spend much time on this because we're going to do the ones that are a little oddball to most people. But this is what most of us spend most of our time in the United States fighting fires in. You know, a class 4, NFPA type 5 wood frame building. So gazillion different types of construction, from lightweight truss, parallel cord truss today, to standard dimensional lumber, balloon frame construction, up until to platform frame construction. Every different type and size, you know, from modest houses like you'll see here in South Jamaica to, again, another Brian Hickey picture here when he was a lieutenant in 126. You know, he was making the point when we were showing this about the closeness of the buildings were close enough, but there was still major exposure problems. And even he had another picture that I didn't include, which showed the overlap of the eaves.
Eaves, oh my God, 270, 303, those company 308.
You could do a whole presentation.
Oh my God, the houses are inches away.
Right, everything from Queen Anne's to Center Hall Colonials. You know, all these buildings. You got to know the ones in your areas, how to get in, get out. You know, outside cellar entrances, single cellar entrances. You know, Cape Cod, you name it. There's a million different types out there.
A lot of fires in these buildings that they have the car in the middle in the driveway, and it catches both houses. You know, almost every time guys drop two lines because they got two buildings going, you know, up the exterior most of the time, getting into the attics and the eaves and all that.
Right. And again, you know, in our area, our section of the country, we have a lot of basements, you know, a lot of below grade fires. That tends to be the toughest fires in these buildings, is the below grade fires. But in large sections of the country, they don't have basements, you know, because of the water table or just style of building, but whatever. But again, most of us in the United States do the lion's share of our firefighting in something like this, you know. And then these buildings are getting so big, you know. We have them in my neighborhood now. We have an Army base that they gave up. The Army moved out. They gave it to the town. The town sold it to developers. And they put 71 homes, little McMansions on it, but they're close together. Nobody wants a lot of property. So you have something like this. You have these big houses.
Double the size or triple the size, right?
Yeah, and all plywood I-joists. Again.
Oh, my boy.
So, and again, you know, you bring a volunteer department in and during manpower, you know, scarce times, let's say during the day, it can be very challenging, because think of the scenario. You got fire in building A, kind of like what we're talking about here, and gets into both exposures, you know, and you got a crew of 4 guys, you know, and that's it. So you've got to develop, you know, whether it's using the deck gun, whether it's using like blitz fire nozzles, or just stretching 2.5s, a couple of, like you said, dropping 2 lines and just taking defensive positions. But you have to rethink how you do things with some of these buildings, you know. So
and depending on the manpower.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point, without a doubt. It's the manpower can get really brutal, and when you're depending on the next town coming, there's a reflex time for that. You know, there's a time, there's a lag. And it's not that small, you know. So.
Yep. And that time it could jump into another building by the time they get there.
Right. Exactly.
Murphy.
Leave that picture up for a second. Hey.
Yep.
Okay. It's my turn. A little color commentary. All right. You notice. All right. Besides it's construction feature, depending on the area, you pull up to this. What do you see? I see barred windows, right? I see barred windows on the first floor. Well, guess what? If the windows on the front of the building are barred on the first floor, I guarantee the rest of the way around the house, they're all barred. So when you pull up, you know, your first due, your forcible entry, or you're the OV, you're going to notice that, you know, well, if your normal tool is a hook and a Halligan, you know what? You might want to think about bringing an alternative tool that's going to help you to get the bars, whether it's a torch, a metal cutting blade, a sawzall, something, you're going to get on the radio and you're going to let everybody else that's coming into the box know that there's barred windows. And, those are two, important things. If you go around to the rear, you see that, you go around to the rear, and you only have your regular tools, and now you're trying to, you might be able to pry them off with the Halligan, but maybe you can't. You don't want to be stuck in the back there. My old saying, you don't want to have your thumb up your ass because you didn't bring the right tools, and now you're hoping somebody else comes around. Those 2 or 3 minutes that are wasted there could mean the difference between one of the brothers that's inside, if they got to bail out and then they hit bars because they're not taken, or somebody getting in to make a search where you can find somebody. So, these are the things, again, you have to, be aware of and make the right moves in your initial size up when you get there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rabbit tool or the rebar cutter would be a good choice, right?
A pedal cutter, there's this, like I said, you might have, and you might have bars on the second floor. You might have to work off a portable ladder. You might have to hang a little toy.
A lot of companies have. Actually, Matt Beatty had sent it to me. I got to put it up one of these next shows. The guys in his company, they built. I guess they have a lot of private dwellings, so they have this. Just has a lot of leverage. It's a hook, but it has like a flat end on the on the corner, so that you can get behind it and you could really pry the leg bolts out. And in a one-shot deal, I guess, again, you have to adapt to your area. So,
right, but and that's what firemen do. Like you said, that to me, that's great to hear something like that. They have a problem, and they're addressing it. So maybe they don't have to take 3 or 4 tools. They find
right. One guy could go around and pop all of these things probably.
Right. That used to be what I would see a lot of the times, especially down like when you worked at 175, Hank, it's that area is loaded with these buildings, these bird houses, bird cages.
Well, the bird cage, absolutely. Yeah.
But I found most of those, if I could get one side of those in a wood, I'm talking about in a wood frame building. Okay. If I could get one side of the bars off, the leverage from that, I could pull the rest off. Right, I only had to get one side most of the time, And again, that's a good tip right there because, but you know what? One of the biggest things is with all this stuff we're talking about is when you encounter it, and especially for new guys, for young guys right now, is to get it on the radio, not to put every little thing on the radio, but when you see something that's important, like you just said, bars in the rear, make sure the incident commander knows that because he's going to need more resources there. Like the first thing the city did when they addressed that was they put an extra truck, and preferably if there wasn't one on the box, a tower ladder, right? To be able to hit those windows and operate out of the tower ladder to take them on the upper floors, right? Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Moving along.
Again, different shapes and sizes.
My favorite.
There's Louis' favorite. Yeah. Hey, that looks like the one that you own. Isn't that the one on 66th Avenue?
I'm waiting for that one to burn, allegedly.
But again, the same thing in a different package, right? I mean, it's wood frame construction. It's again all the other hazards with the regular wood frame building, but it may have it like you see the ones on the right might have a brick veneer on the outside. That doesn't mean it's a brick building. That's a pretty again, all of us know that, or just anybody who's listening who's been on the job knows that. But for guys who haven't encountered these buildings in other areas of the country, it's a different animal, so it's just that you have different hazards. And again, there's bars on a couple of those windows there, and there's the laddering in the rear is becomes real important. Roof access, most of the time, I was in a tower ladder company dealing with this most of the time. We went, our roofman generally went up an adjacent building to get to the roof, or went up the first 2 aerial ladders area if they were on. So
yeah, bucket was slow, right?
And,
right. Well, the bucket was being taken by the OV. So if you had victims,
if he was going, all right.
If you had victims, which was often the case, or the report of victims, they wanted to get into the top floor as fast as possible.
Another to point to make, with the frames, the ones that are the same height, obviously not the white one with the vinyl siding, but like Louis brought up Pine Street, you could have a whole row of these frames. If you got fire in the top floor into the cock loft of these buildings, you generally have to check the adjoining cock lofts because I don't know if anybody's the younger guys out there, brick noggin, right? What they did was ceiling above the ceiling level at the cockloft. Back in the day, they were supposed to, and they would take leftover bricks and stuff and slap mortar on it and try to make some type of fire stopping between the buildings, but it was never, completely enclosed. So you always had areas where the beams would go through, and fire would pass through and start a beam on the adjoining building and the cockloft on fire. So, just because they're two totally separate buildings. Don't let that fool you, because in that cockloft area, you could have fire spreading right across, even though they're not considered, common cocklofts.
Right.
There's lots of breaches in what they did where fire could pass through.
Yeah.
That's the dead man's room there, correct? Above the
door.
Above the door.
Yeah.
So the stairway goes up that side where the door is on the white building on the frame. It goes up that whole side, and that
the
room.
Hallway terminates at that room.
Correct. So that door, a lot of people would get stuck in there in that room because it didn't. Most of the time, sometimes they would have a door, but not a lot of times.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they use that mostly in the brownstone, right? The dead man. Most frame.
Yeah, and that was always a challenge getting in there, because also, you look at it, throwing a portable ladder up there.
Yeah, the stoop is in the way.
The stoop is in the way, right? Exactly. Right. So it just naturally gets done a little later, or you try to get into the other room, the room next door, and get over into the
right.
I remember I lived in a frame on Ithaca Street in Queens, and I was in the dead man's room. I didn't know what it was when I was a kid, but the thing is that it's just a little small room that has another exit out into the hallway, and then into the main part of the what was a railroad flat. The rest of it is a railroad flat going to the rear. So, but these buildings exist all throughout the country. This is another thing, like you guys were saying, you go around doing these shows and you see these old downtown areas. It's not just in downtown areas. I've seen these in small towns in Pennsylvania. They're just, the downtown area is a couple of blocks of these kind of buildings.
Yeah. When we go to Harrisburg, right, Ruffy?
Oh my God, those guys
all over the place, man.
Those guys are got it going on over there.
Yeah. Harrisburg. Yeah. Without
yeah. Yep.
Baltimore is loaded with these. I remember.
Oh, Baltimore too.
Well,
Baltimore has those 2-story. It's kind of like Philadelphia too, right? I think they have those 2-story brick jobs. Like the 3 windows. I don't know. They got blocks and blocks. Every time I see a fire, it's always that.
I think Boston does too. Has those 2-story.
Boston is probably the best fire. Yeah, triple deckers. Boston is probably the best fire department in the United States for portable ladder work.
Laddering, right? Oh my God.
Without a doubt. They've been renowned for that for years. For, like you said, the triple deckers, getting to the rear of the triple deckers, with long ladders. And what do they call it? They have a term for it. Rescues over ladders, I believe they call it, So but it's a real portable ladder department. They're very good at it. So, but this is where you earn your money is again knowing these types of buildings and knowing some of the little idiosyncrasies with them, so you can operate better. All right, Peter, let's move on.
Yes, sir.
All right, this is anybody you recognize this one, Lou? Hank, you probably recognize.
I do. I know what it is.
176.
There you go.
You got it. Very
is that
good.
The tin house?
The tin house. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to get a picture of a Butler building, and I was actually driving by this going to work. Remember I told you going in and out between headquarters and Long Island, right? So I'm driving. I'm only a block away from this. This is an easy. So I got it. And but metal buildings, you see them Butler buildings. You see large commercial warehouses built out of this stuff. It's just they have their own, and they have no fire resistance rating whatsoever.
They advertise these all the time now, Cap, for people who want a quick commercial building. They come in, they fill one of these things right up. Yeah.
And it's very economical. You pour a concrete slab, and these things go up very quickly. I mean, so it's a great thing for one aspect of it, the efficiency of it, putting it up. But it's also they come in all shapes and sizes. There are full warehouses made out of this. I mean, where, you go to a Costco or something like that, and you'll see them, or their tilt slab or whatever. There's all different types of construction, not necessarily type 2, non-combustible, but you'll see all different types that are made out.
We used to practice cutting the roofs on some of those. The triangle, right? We used to cut the triangle on these.
Yeah, just to get the practice cutting metal. Not necessarily that you would do that, but just to get the practice of cutting metal. I mean, the first time that guys cut metal, a lot of times, the saw skips down the metal, So the idea is to teach guys, like if you're cutting a padlock, put it against it and slowly squeeze. It sounds so simple, but in the heat of the moment, so many guys miss
people
that,
are amped up.
Yeah.
Right. But I think what Louis is talking about, there was a time when now you might not be cutting Q decking, but
right.
The thought was there had been times when guys were making the coffin cut with the Q decking, and if you
falling through,
right, just like corrugated cardboard, it would swing down because the way the corrugate was. Where if you cut a triangle, you didn't have it was rigid on all the cuts. So
you're talking about the root. Right, that was the theory. Right, you're absolutely right. I forgot about that. Mm-hmm. So, but Chief Dunn talks about that, about those, about the Q decking falling in. I mean, he originally wrote about that like in the early '80s, so that's been around for a long time. But we just don't get the opportunity to see it that often, So
right.
It's definitely. I mean, you look at an advanced fire in a non-combustible building like the Coke warehouse that we drilled in, something like that. It could get real dangerous real fast, and those trusses or beams, whether it's a lightweight system or a standard I-beam system, they're spaced pretty far apart. 8 feet. So
that was a love-hate for us, right? The Coca-Cola, we got to play around in the old Coke, but we would go there 4 times a night.
I know.
Class, what was that? The class threes.
One dumpster they used to light in the back of that place, and there was no hydrant near it, and occasionally we weren't able to put it out with the tank. It was a pain in the ass.
Well, that building that we worked on, that was behind that main building where they did the soda, right?
Yeah. A lot of hazmat in there. I mean, they were very good. We very rarely had any incidents, but there was a lot of hairy stuff in 288's area. I always remember that. What was the place we used to go to? The Star Box Company.
Oh yeah, corrugated.
Oh my God! If that place ever went up, I think they closed it down. Cap. I think they closed it.
You couldn't run out of this place fast enough. John Norman told me. John Norman worked on the sprinklers there, like designed the sprinkler system. He went for a fire protection engineering degree at Oklahoma State, and I think that was his first job back from college. And he told me about that place. He said, it's very complicated. I said, it's very scary. Are you kidding?
They would have doors that would drop, and the whole entire room would fill up with foam, right?
They had it looked like, if you were looking at it from like the roof, which we would go up on the top and watch, it looked like 3-story toilet paper rolls, right? Yep. So they were like a 3-story building, and they would pick these up with the crane, and they would stack them up in this, whatever it was. I think it was like, I don't know, 6 stories, 7 stories, and they would stack them up in this one concrete room. And if there was ever a fire, the whole room, I think that whole room, which was like, I don't know, half a football field, would fill up with foam in like 2 minutes.
The doors seal in the whole room.
A lot of aircraft hangars have that now. That's happened at JFK a couple of times where it's gone off. Yeah.
I think they closed that down. I think one of the guys in 288 was telling me. I'm not sure, but I think so. That whole area is getting built up now over there too. Like we would go down there, you wouldn't see a person there, right?
That's like the last. That was when we were there anyway. That was like the last little vestige of manufacturing in New York City. You know?
Yeah, right. No doubt.
I mean, we walked into that one metal working place. I forget the name. It was pretty big actually, and they're making landing gear, like nose landing gear for 757s. And I'm like, wow. And I think Billy Quick came in and asked, "Can you bore out this nozzle 1/16 of an inch?" And the guy takes it. He goes, "Yeah, I think we can handle that."
Yeah, that whole area is getting built up now.
Amazing.
What's not?
Yeah. Let's go to the next slide. I don't even know what it is. Let's see.
Oh, heavy timber. Timber heavy, 6.
Yes, heavy timber. Go to the next one, Pete.
Okay.
We all have these. Yeah, churches, NFPA Type 4 heavy timber. Again, these are buildings that are born to burn. And we don't get everybody has them. We don't get many fires in them. When we do, they're a disaster. Go to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay. This is one on Bushwick Avenue in the 90s, I think. 176's area. Yeah, that's actually 233 right in front. But they saved this church. Pretty unusual.
Really?
This was not a total loss. They saved this church.
Well, they have so many voids, right, Cap? The wood is 100 years old, and the voids in there, and everything's so just discombobulated. There's nothing.
And they're challenging fires. I mean, look at the fire. What was it, last year or the year before in Notre Dame in Paris? You know,
God,
they're enormous fires. You know, when they happen. I mean, even I got a slide coming up in a minute on the fire in Manhattan.
Trying to save the stained glass. You're trying to do this. You're trying not to do damage, and next thing you know, Murphy shows up.
Just keep going, Pete. Yeah, this was a nice save. If we had another can in 111, we would have had this. Now let me tell you, as God is
what is that? Is that a church?
We didn't do so good there.
That's a church. That's a church. And how long does it take to set up a tower ladder? Right,
5 minutes.
There was no smoke showing when we pulled up.
What?
No, I mean, I'm sorry. There was no fire showing. There was some smoke showing. We didn't even go to the box. This is at Reed and Monroe. We went to like Reed and like 4 blocks down, and luckily we looked to the left, and there's a guy doing jumping jacks in the street, like 4 blocks up. Yeah, let's go this way. And it was Lieutenant Vinetsky, who just passed away last year. He was the officer, and we pull up, and there's smoke pushing. But it wasn't really looking too bad. They went into it's not called a rectory. They went into like an ancillary building. It would be on the far left side of this picture. It's not visible. And then they opened these doors into the main body of the church. Now, this is them telling us afterwards, right? And I think it was Roddy and might have been Joe Borst or the inside team with Lieutenant Vinetsky. And then these windows all on the side here on the left of the picture, they all failed simultaneously, and that was it. We were just setting up the tower ladder, and this thing went from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds. The rose window went out. We actually were just rotating away from the building because the chief told us to come back down and move the truck because he felt the steeple was going to collapse on the rig. And 214, when we were actually in closer to the building, was wetting us down with that 2.5 that you see, the second stream there, you know. But just these buildings are built to burn. Be very careful when you arrive at these. Do not overcommit. And all the stuff that you need for big fire, you need a lot of water real fast, you know. A lot of water 10 minutes ago. So that's just that was one of the biggest amounts of fire in a short period of time that I ever saw.
What was the church fire in Manhattan not too long ago, a couple of years ago, where the fire was coming out of the circle in the front of the church? It looked like it was like a blow, like coming out of a jet engine.
You mean next slide, Pete?
Oh, yeah, that's
that picture. Yeah.
Go on.
That's it.
Yeah, they got video from the absolute start of this before the fire department
it wasn't
was on
much showing,
scene.
right? Yeah, right.
There wasn't, and that was what the other one was like. But so it's that's my point is that it's real easy to get lulled into a sense of I think we got this, you know, and no, you don't have it at all, you know. And the other thing is the high ceilings in these churches. You know, you need 2.5-inch lines, and even then you might have a problem knocking it down. Did you see that robot that they just came out with after the Notre Dame fire? They say that saved the cathedral in Notre Dame in France.
Really?
Yeah, but you know what? It's one of those things you'll never use except for this kind of an application. But you know, if it can throw 500 gallons a minute, 300 feet up in the air, then maybe it's got an application. You know, it's just you're not gonna use it for a what do you call it? A row frame on a side street in Bushwick. But
Patty Lee said, "Does this look familiar, Kev?"
I knew he was going to say it.
Why would he say that?
I didn't know he was in the chat because we had the church, the Mass with the church, right next to his house where I plowed into his garbage cans and hooked up on the.
You
now
ran
now it's a vacant lot.
What? Yeah, he lives right next door, and I was working with Evans. We pull up, and we look down the driveway, and there's fire blowing out the window. I roll up into Patty Lee's. I must have sent his garbage cans about 3 blocks away when I plowed it. But that's another one, Cap. Like, it was blowing out the windows. By the time I hooked up, it was coming out the steeple. That's how fast it went.
They're built to burn. My son was saying there's a whole thing now that they have a whole program now in the city on houses of worship, which is good. because you used to have to go back and look at individual WNYF articles going back like 20 years to see anything that we had on churches, and there's a lot to it. And again, it's one of those things where we don't do nobody does a lot of firefighting in churches, obviously. And when you do get them, they're very, very tough fires, and they're very dangerous too. They're definitely a huge collapse potential,
Yeah, I had the one where they were screaming at Quick to get off the roof with Lieutenant Mojica, Lieutenant Mojica from Rescue 1, Adam Rand, John Ielpi. But they knocked that down pretty quick though, man. It was I just felt bad taking the stained glass windows.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's
in the end, that's why they stay smoky, right? Because nobody wants to take the glass.
I was taking them
smoked up.
Yep.
No, you don't want to be the guy with the pastor giving you the evil eye.
Yeah. The
He couldn't see me, and he didn't know it was me. Couldn't see.
It's amazing. You don't realize when I was in one, every once in a while when we go to St. Pat's Cathedral, we'd be able to get up in the front. There was a stairway that it was a locked door. You could get up above the ceiling of the cathedral, and the first time I looked at it, I was in awe because it's as much lumber as you'd see in a lumber yard up there, and back then it wasn't sprinkled. They had lots of smoke detectors, and they had like live cameras, I guess, and security monitoring that stuff. But you could see how if any fire got a little bit of a hold up there, it was just. You can see why every church fire looks like this because
you can't get through the roof because it was mostly like slate roofing too, right? So you could never punch through it to even get to it, right?
Right. The weight on it. I mean, it's heavy timber, but and I'm not going to say it would collapse right away, but there's plenty to burn up there. It's and you're not getting lines up on it.
You know what building was like that in our first? Well, I think it was second due area, but we wound up first due the crematorium. That was built
my house
in the 1860s or somewhere around there. But that entire outdoor crematorium was built around the original building. So if you go on the roof of the original building, you can see the other building. The other building, which encapsulates it. It's crazy, but you see the heavy timber too, like the old heavy timber. And you see this. They just built a building around another building. Is what they
we used
did.
to drill on that a lot. That place.
Yep.
Because they were burning. I mean, they're burning all the time there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we had one job in there where some fat dude was oozing out. It was a big fat guy, and it was oozing out
overflowed
onto some. They had some baskets and some other shit on the floor, and Timmy Murphy had the nozzle. Thank God for him. Good for him. He had black fat all over his bunker gear.
Oh,
and it stunk.
Oh, come on.
Oh, I bet it did.
Come on. We used to go there.
Clean that.
I used to go there for drill once in a while. Like if I said, like, come on, we'll go to the crematorium. We used to go there. We'd go in there, be like, you cooking anybody up? They'd be like, yeah, we got somebody in there. You would look in there. They had the little window, and the only thing that would make it was the teeth. That's it.
What?
Yeah, but if you got in there when they first did it, bro, it was great because the flame would come through the head, and then the flame would come out the eyes, the mouth. It'd be like you look like you're watching a movie or something. It was crazy.
Yeah, like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
You won't find that in the tactic books, will you?
And he did the wrong thing.
What happened?
My friend Dennis Conway used to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Hank.
You're not going to find that in any of the tactics books, I don't think.
No. Melting blubber. Nope. I don't even think Cap's got a slide on that. Those no slide on melting blubber.
God, my friend Dennis Conway used to take us between night tours. We used to work straight tours. We used to go down to the morgue at Kings County. That was his idea of a good time. Go to the morgue and then go to lunch.
Oh, sweet, nice.
Yeah, and see whatever they brought. You get anything fresh last night? You know, they
maybe catch an autopsy. I don't know.
We got a floater. You know, so that was one of the worst things I ever saw.
Floaters are good.
Oh, yeah.
What an educational seminar.
A little bit of everything.
It's a table, bro. Yep.
Next.
Next, exactly.
There you go, Hank.
Wait. Okay. That's you, bro.
Well, no, the reason that Dennis knows this is near and dear to my heart, only because I think this fire definitely opened my eyes to lightweight, wood truss construction. This was a gift shop right outside of Disney. The Orange County Fire Department responded, and it tells you when it was February of '89. And I think, Dennis, you know more about the actual response, but I think there was 1 or 2 engines were here at the time. They weren't there that long. I think
this fire came down the building came down very quickly. It was only about a year old or something like that. And the fire was in the attic. And go to the next slide, Pete. I think there's another couple of pictures on this. This is after the collapse, obviously. 3 firemen are in the building. Firefighters are in the building when the collapse occurred. And you can see by this picture, there's only 1 engine on scene here. And it collapsed in the center. They were under it. One firefighter was able to survive and get to the exposure 2 side, the B side, and get out through a door, a window, I think, on that side, and saved his own life. But Orange County lost 2 firefighters. The firehouse which I'm assuming was the first 2 firehouse, is less than a mile down the road. But this is a brand new building, a beautiful looking building. And then afterwards, I remember going down there a few years later and going to a conference down there, and the building was there. And I go, what? They rebuilt the exact same building on this site. It's not a gift shop anymore, but it's something else. But it's again, like Hank said, for those of us who are kind of like students of the fire service back in the 80s, this was kind of an eye opener. Because 2 firefighters died, another guy was almost killed there, and again, we're starting to see now a fairly steady stream of firefighters being killed in these lightweight buildings, And again, somebody just posted that these buildings are being replaced. I was just talking to John Norman about a picture. If we get to it later, I showed Hank. I think I showed you guys, right, about that building that they were putting up in my town. He used the term disposable buildings. These are what these are.
Captain Murphy, that was Mikey Milner saying that the buildings are made to burn and to be replaced. So,
absolutely.
So stay out of them.
It was. Right. So, but the whole point of what we're talking about tonight is, like I said at the beginning, is not for the old timers. So they're either done with their career or they're on certainly the back 9. It's for the new guys. And this is what's important to realize, that this is important, that you are able to identify that you know the hazards, you know why they're hazardous, you know what these buildings are going to do, and that you're prepared to handle them. And like Mike just said, stay out of them. Exactly. It's the whole thing. But before you can stay out of them, you have to recognize them.
Right.
You have to recognize that it's there and what it is. So hopefully, like I said at the beginning, everybody's running around with a camera in their pocket. Use it, and take it back to your senior people and your fire prevention people, and show them, and your chiefs, and show them what you saw, and then let them take care of it from there. But the idea is to make sure that you see it. Now, I can tell you this. I mean, the thing that scares me the most, or not that scares me the most, but I think is the most prevalent, is you see a lot of residential renovations, where people put up modular extensions on their houses or dormers on their house, and they're lightweight material.
So you think it's heavyweight, and it's not.
I have a modular dormer on my house, right above my head right now, and the thing is, though, there's no lightweight truss in it, so I'm not that worried about that happening. But what does happen with that is it goes up so fast. It literally goes from, like my house was a 2-story cape. They take the top off of it, they level it, and they put these 2 modules showed up in a truck. They were up on the house by 10 o'clock in the morning. Now, if those modules are lightweight truss, that's a huge hazard now that was in a building that didn't have any hazards before, and that, again, in 1 or 2 days, you can have that go up. The store that I showed you earlier, that's up and it's all Tyvek in. I mean, literally a couple of days, they took a crane and tilted everything up, and it just goes up so fast. It's very easy to miss it, is what I'm trying to say. So identifying it is the most important thing, and then getting it into, what we call SIDS in the city, or whatever your computer system is, so that that information is in there 20, 30, 40 years from now, because these buildings aren't going anywhere. They're going to still be there. until they tear them down. So you want to make sure that you have this in your institutional memory, so to speak.
Right. I mean, the whole point that, like I said, I brought it up was that opened my eyes. All the buildings we showed tonight, we've all been in fires in all of them, but these types, the burn time doesn't need to be that long before you're going to have a rapid failure and potential collapse. And that's what you have to be aware of. You saw in that picture the amount of fire, and how long does it take? For that first new unit, a mile down the road, they're there. They have a line in the building, and it's still before even I guess the whole first alarm assignment is there. The building's collapsing on them. So
right. Exactly.
That's the takeaway. You took the pictures. It's lightweight wood truss. In there probably, I don't know the time of day, but there might not have been a life hazard in there. You have a life hazard. So you really got to see where that fire is. If it's up in that lightweight wood truss, beware. You might.
So that building would be similar to like a McDonald's. That's all those types of buildings, right? McDonald's, and Wendy's, and all those types of crap.
Right. Well, except this is a peaked roof, lightweight wood truss. Whereas at McDonald's, you're gonna have more, flat or a mansard. But it's still, lightweight wood, gusset plates holding it. And again, engineering-wise, they're built to, take a lot of load. They can take a snow load, air conditioning load. You got when they design them, and that was always with the fire service. We always said these architects design these buildings and these engineers. It's a marvel. They can have wide open spaces, it can hold a lot of weight, but they never think about the building going on fire. And that's what we think about firefighters. Right. So even though it can hold a tremendous, the way they're designed with the truss can hold a tremendous amount of weight. You put a little fire impingement on there, that changes the whole complexion and rapid failure and firefighter deaths. They don't build buildings to look at them like they're going to go on fire, and that's the problem. Right,
and you look at and you're seeing it all over the country all the time now. Where these buildings fail, and they fail very early. And I have a couple of slides later on. I don't know if we'll get to them, but Houston, Texas suffered 2 horrible fires. A fire in a McDonald's, again, like Hank just said. Actually, go to the next slide, Pete. I think we have a little of that on there.
Hold on a sec.
Yep, no problem.
You got it, boss. There it is.
All right, so like up in the right-hand corner here, wood trusses. These McDonald's very often, and along with many other fast food restaurants, have parallel cord lightweight wood trusses, which was what you see in a picture I took in Brooklyn here on the bottom. So there's a masonry wall between the units, and it's a parallel cord. So that means it's flat. It's got a top cord, a bottom cord, and a 90-degree angle web that goes back and forth oriented at a 45-degree angle. So that's what happens. But I look at like Houston. Houston had two incidents, one in 2000 with a McDonald's, like you see on the top picture there. And 2 firefighters were killed in Houston at that fire in 2000. An arson fire at 4:30 in the morning, and they're in there fighting this fire for a while, and the roof comes down and traps two of the firefighters. And then 13 years later, they have a fire in a hotel, a horrible fire. They're on scene for 12 minutes. They also have a lightweight wood truss roof collapse at the 12-minute mark where 4 firefighters are killed and 14 others are seriously injured, including a captain that loses both of his legs in the rescue effort. And there is a secondary collapse on top of the rescue team. So again, a horrible series of events. And we've seen it ourselves where you pull up, that this is a lightweight building. Let's say you have a development in town, a residential development. You pull like what just went up around the corner where I live, and you pull in there, and it's a lightweight building. So you're thinking right away, they're getting multiple calls. You're thinking, I'm going to go defensive on this if this is anything significant. And mom is out front saying the 2 kids are upstairs. That's when all of this goes out the window. Yep, changes everything. The whole risk assessment, the whole risk benefit analysis goes right out the window, and we're going to do what we have to do, within the realms of what we think we can get away with. And you know what? We don't have a lot. None of us have a large depth of experience in fighting fires in these kind of buildings. We have a large depth of experience in fighting fires in those buildings that we just saw 25 or 30 slides on. That's what we have a depth of experience on. Those buildings don't start to fail until 20 minutes in. These buildings start to fail, could be at the 6-minute mark.
Yeah, Cap, I was actually going to, in the pre-show, we were talking about some of those numbers you were talking about, which were absolutely crazy. So if you have that handy there.
Yeah, I'll just read it off. What is it? A American Testing and Standards did a series of burn tests on these common structures because the CDC sent out a newsletter about firefighter fatalities. So many firefighters were dying. I think 26 firefighters in a 10-year period or 11-year period had passed away due to collapse of roof or floors. And this is what they did with their studies. Found this: a 2x10 dimensional lumber ceiling failed without a ceiling. So like your basement ceiling, right? In your house that isn't finished, right? 18 minutes, 45 seconds to failure. All right. In this test that they did, the same ceiling with the same dimensional assembly with the ceiling. So it's got some fireproofing there. Lasted 44 minutes till failure. Big difference there, right? But that's regular sawn dimensional lumber, right? That we're used to in most of the buildings that we spent most of our careers in. Okay. Go down to a wood eye joist without a ceiling, which is what my neighbors around the corner are all living in. 71 homes built with this stuff. Failure time was 6 minutes and 3 seconds. That is an order of magnitude more hazardous. Lightweight wood trusses did better than I thought they were going to do. Metal gusset trusses with frame stair openings without a ceiling lasted 13 minutes. And that's what you see through most of the rest of this.
Wow, that's almost double than the I-beam?
Yeah,
I would not think that. How the heck could that be?
I would not have thought that, wood eye joist with a ceiling, again, last over 26 minutes, almost 27 minutes. A finger joint truss, which is where they don't use gusset plates, where they're like dovetailed in.
Yeah.
Let me just, without a ceiling, lasted 13 minutes. Very surprised at that it was that long. With a ceiling, again, it's in 26 minutes. So when you have protection from, like sheetrock,
right,
it buys you quite a bit of time, and then let's see, 14-inch metal truss flooring with a ceiling was almost a half an hour, was 29 minutes. Without a ceiling, 13 minutes. Again, longer than I thought it was going to be. Chief Dunn says slightly greater than 10 minutes, and he was right on that. But these were scientific tests, and there's more that I didn't mention. But the point is I would have thought that the plywood eye joist, the TJIs, would have lasted longer.
Yeah.
I think most of us would have thought that just anecdotally, and according to these tests that were done by the government,
Got to be the glue or something that's failing,
yeah,
right? I mean,
the webs burn out. There's a couple of pictures, I don't know if we get to them, but the wood burn out in them. And you see that all around the country. The carpet is the tacks from the carpet are what's holding everything up.
Everybody was saved by the carpet.
Yeah, Matt Neary had a fire.
The webs on those, Lou, are just. You know what OSB is? The oriented strand board.
Yeah.
But it's all wood that's glued together, and that's generally what they're using. So you have a piece of 3/4 inch plywood that's your web, and then a 2x4 as a top cord and a bottom cord. So that plywood with flame impingement on it and the glues and stuff that are in it.
Yeah, but you would think
and the glues are flammable, aren't they? Aren't the glues flammable?
We took a section of that, I think from the Nehemiah houses, but someplace that was going up in Brooklyn, and it was back like 1990, maybe 1989, and we took a 1-foot section of it and brought it back to Rescue 2 and put it on the kitchen stove for a very scientific test, and we almost had to go get an extinguisher. I mean, it was a lot of fire that we were. Really? There was more fire than we were expecting, and because of what Hank said, it's because of the glue in the OSB.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's like,
but I would think like the truss, like you would say, like if you lose one part of the truss, you lose everything, right? So it doesn't even have to be the whole thing that has to fail, right?
Right.
So, like what Hank is saying, like I would think, I mean, that thing, I don't know, just seems strange. But
wood, they always said wood. The difference between metal and wood is that metal sags, and eventually it fails. But wood trusses just fail without warning.
Yeah, right.
So
Right.
Again, that's a good takeaway too. I mean, for guys that are, haven't had much experience with any of this, that has been the experience in the fire service for the most part, is that wood trusses just fail. And whether it's a bowstring truss, a heavy timber bowstring truss, like at Wall Bombs, which failed later, like at the 20-minute mark, maybe a little later than that, or it's a lightweight wood truss, which fails much earlier, like those 2 fires in Houston. It's out there, and we're professionals. You've got to be students of what you're going up against. You got to know the enemy. As Frank Brannigan said, the building is our enemy.
Yep. And even those numbers that you're talking about, Cap, 6 minutes, 13 minutes, 20 minutes.
That's when you're showing up, kind of almost.
By the time somebody recognizes there's a fire, by the time it goes to the dispatcher, by the time you get it, by the time you get on the road, by the time you get there, stretch a line, that doesn't leave you much time before.
No.
Really.
No, that Houston fire, the Mayday was transmitted at the 12-minute mark. That's the 12-minute mark from the time of the alarm.
Yeah.
So that's not even,
Like that.
their response time was a few minutes, like everybody, and it's not a lot of time. You got to get a water supply. You got to get in there. And again, we're all under pressure. You know what's going to happen. Somebody's going to be standing out there saying so and so's in there, or and now you're under that pressure.
Yeah. And now we're talking about urban. What about when we go out further? And I watch some of these response sometimes. These guys respond for like 15, 20 minutes before they get into the box. So that's got to play into your mind, being on the back step, knowing, or even as the officer, knowing that I'm driving 20 minutes.
There's fire districts out west that have areas that are so big with so few staffing, such light staffing that they have, half an hour response time, 40-minute response time.
No doubt. Yep.
Well, listen, I wanted to say too, because since we're talking about building, I was not a big building BI guy, right?
What?
So as far as, everybody knows that.
Who was?
All right, but I will say this.
Fisher.
I would say this, and almost every time I went to a building, if I noticed something that wasn't right, we talked about it with the guys there, whether it was an EMS run, a gas leak, whatever it was, we'd have guys come in, we'd talk about it, or I did a SIDS on the building. Every time, almost all the time. I just didn't go out to look at it.
Are you trying to make up now? Are you trying to make up for you?
No, I'm just saying, it wasn't, I took building.
Not to be cynical, though, but I mean, at least you said you were doing something, right?
I just never like to go out to look at buildings. If I was at the building, I absolutely would go over it without fail.
Yeah, because
Danny.
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 Fresca.
But you guys, when we were working, you guys used to walk into those buildings, and nobody wanted to be out there doing it. But then when you walk in, you go, "Oh, geez!"
Holy shit!
Right.
I mean, you walked into that Starbucks company, and everybody's mouths were down. Their chins were down around the floor. We're first due at this thing, I'm like,
yeah.
wow.
Hey, Kat, do you remember it was closed down? It was an auto parts store, but we found out when we went in there, it was actually a Civil War hospital. Do you remember that building on Grand Avenue?
Yes, I think I do. I don't think I was working though. I think I heard it secondhand though. Yeah.
Yeah, man. It was an old Civil War hospital, but on the first floor, it was an auto parts store for years, Ruffy. You know where it was.
I know.
Avenue. But if you went above, there was rooms. It looked like a hospital. It was crazy, man. Old building. So you would never know that unless you were on BI, Lou. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I did know some buildings that I was not going into, and the one was the Maspit plumbing supply.
Yes.
That building's on fire. Okay, we're going to set up over
and
here.
We're not going anywhere near
that building.
The bingo hall.
The bingo hall was bad. You know what I thought was one of the worst?
What's that?
Remember Durafoam?
Oh my God! Yeah, by the cemetery. By the
square block warehouse building filled with foam rubber.
Yep.
I don't think you could run out of that building fast enough if it was on fire.
We did BI there. When you would walk through,
I inspected it a couple
stacked
of times.
up,
to the ceiling,
20 feet high. Yeah, 20
to the
feet.
ceiling with foam rubber.
Durafoam. I'm not plumbing supply. That place had so much weight, right? So many shelves. Oh my God. They used to pass the pipe from the basement.
Yeah,
Remember they
yeah. I would have sworn that Duraphone place would have been a borough call. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I would have. I said to myself when I was expecting this, I said, either we're going to be here one night, or I'm going to be home retired and just watching this on TV. You know, like from the helicopter, and it's and
it's in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of in between.
It's off the
There's nothing else.
291, right? There's nobody there that gets there right away.
I'm like, wow. But at least, it was sprinkled. But thank God for sprinklers.
All right, Petey.
All righty. Where are we going next, Dennis?
Well, that's a good question.
Do you want to show them the bowstring or no? I know you like the picture of the bowstring, but
we can show it. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I got a picture I got to look at over here. I'll be right back.
Go back. Go back to that slide.
Which slide? Same one?
Yeah, the same one. I just want because it is a good picture. That's actually in the bottom left there. That's a great diagram of a bowstring truss, and you see those all over in bowling alleys, car dealerships, supermarkets. But Chief Nick Visconti took this picture, and he was nice enough to give it to me for the laptop drill project. But you couldn't find. It's like a plan view. This was, and this wasn't even in New York, from what I understand. I think it was somewhere north of New York. But you see all of the components in a bowstring truss. You see illustrated here, and just look at the span that covers, the open span from wall to wall. That's why it was used.
And
Hank, they're not really. Are they still using this anymore?
Not new, but they're all
not new,
over.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, I can think of 4 of them in my little town.
Yeah, no doubt.
The higher the bow, the longer the span.
Right. Look at that. It's
and the ends of those buildings are the collapse potential. Like if it goes at the ends of those buildings, because
especially if they have hip rafters. Yeah.
Right, they have the hip rafters, and they've been known to push out and take the walls with them. So they tell you not to set your apparatus up within that collapse zone or be operating in those areas on the ends of those.
Right.
We found a couple of those at the ass end of Maspeth. Remember, Cap? You couldn't see them unless you stepped all the way back.
Yeah.
And that's the big problem from the street. A lot of times you can't see it. There's a picture in here of when I was doing this project of a bowling alley in Staten Island, I think on Highland Boulevard, and you can't from the street. You absolutely cannot tell that it's a bowstring truss. If you go around the side, you can see it. But we were there at 3 o'clock in the morning and just looking at it from the front, you definitely could miss it. And again, to the new guys, this is when you go up to the roof. And you get up to the roof and it's shaped like a hump like this. You got to get that right on the radio. Right on the radio. Anybody who's in the remote positions or anybody who notices it or knows about it, you could have been there on drill, or BI, a year ago.
Swinging a miss, he struck him out.
So anyway, but just again. And you could be out in a real rural area, going to town, and the bowling alley is made of this. It's got this type of construction. So this can happen anywhere, and it does happen.
Yeah, and you got no business being up there.
Yeah, and you gotta identify. I mean, if it's a contents fire, a small contents fire, you got to spell everything out now. So if there's a garbage can burning in the building, you can go in and put it out. If you know that. But if it's an unknown amount of fire, or there's a lot of smoke, you got to really start thinking about this. And hopefully, if your department is worth anything, they already know about this building. Because the word's been out there for decades that these are hazardous.
Cap, do most companies, places around the country, do they have the similar SIDS system set up, or is
a lot do. I mean, for years they had hazardous binders on the trucks, and then I know in my area most departments have a computerized dispatch system, and it brings it up, and it's it'll be a hazard marking on the first page, tells the dispatcher, and it'll tell him maybe it's a truss building, and you hit it, and it brings up exactly what the hazard is. So a lot of places have either their guys or a fire inspector doing this stuff and puts it in. And as long as that stuff is institutionalized, that it can be retrieved, that's the big thing. But again, education is a big thing. I mean, I know about a fire in my town where where the guys didn't recognize a lightweight steel bar joist roof until it started failing. They didn't even realize it was there. So again, the education is important, that guys realize what the hazard is, where it is, and then to recognize that it's present. I mean, you go up on a steel bar joist roof, until the roof man starts cutting, he's not going to know that it's a steel bar joist roof.
Right.
You know, so hopefully, if you've done any inspecting or somebody was there when these buildings were built, they took a mark.
You know, Kat, this may sound a little ignorant, but as far as the volleys are concerned, do they have any kind of building inspection programs out in the volleys? Do they?
It depends on where you go. A lot of places have people that are going around inspecting the buildings. Some have paid staff that do it. Have a paid fire inspector that goes around and he does the normal firing. He's checking your extinguishers and permits and all that, but he's also looking at the buildings. I'll give you a good example. There's a slide. I don't know if we're going to get to it, but there's a slide of a fire in East Meadow last month where a row of stores, and looking at them, nothing spectacular. Friend of mine, Jimmy Darcy, who Hank knows also, was a senior man in 55 truck in the Bronx, an ex-chief in East Meadow. He had put in years ago, he was their fire inspector for years. He noticed that this row of stores, just a regular indescript row of stores, had a gypsum roof. He put it in their SIDS, their computer system. They get a fire in this row of stores last month, and their chiefs were all over it. Nobody on the roof. Nobody used to, they used the reach of the stream 2.5 from the outside. They conducted a very safe operation. So kudos to them, and kudos to Jimmy Darcy for I don't know how many years ago he did it, but he might have saved somebody's life.
Sure.
So that's what it's all about. And that's what we're talking about tonight is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Okay.
Do you guys, since we're getting kind of close to the end here, do you guys want to hit on some of the interior stuff, like the noodles we saw coming out of that wall before the show, or the World Trade Center or anything like that?
Do you want to talk? Well, you know what? You want to go to that World Trade Center slide? Bring it up, because that started quite a bit of discussion before. Hank, you want to talk? Hank, do you want to talk about the gypsum roofs? Yeah, why don't you let Hank do the gypsum roof?
Well, let's do this, and if we have time, we can go into that.
I think Hank's putting in his order for Chinese food or something. I don't know what he's doing over there.
I'm looking at the picture.
I think he's ordering some Chinese food.
I haven't gone up to go to the bathroom yet, like you 4 times yet. So
once.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so hit it. Get it, Hank. What do you got?
Well, listen, we've all discussed what happened that day on September 11th. But since we are bringing up building construction, and there was always thought that a high-rise building could never collapse. A picture's worth 1,000 words. This is the World Trade Center when it was being built. So what you can see is the outside of the structural components of the outside. Okay, on the outside, what you see in red, those are the steel beams that made the exterior of the building. On the outside of that is what they hang the curtain wall. That's the decorative part, the glass and decorative parts of the building. On the inside, you can see what? Lightweight, open web steel bar joists, and they're basically just hanging on a metal flange that's welded to or bolted on the inside there. So again, at the time, their whole thought was you talked about in the past the Empire State Building, and that was a Depression building. And that had columns that went through, and they were encased in concrete. But the problem with that was you didn't have large open expanses of floor space. So when they were building this, they said, they want to have the whole interior open. So hence this type of design. The problem was, once it was built, then it was sprayed with a fire retardant, like what they call a popcorn retardant. It just gets sprayed on the metal components. Problem was, when the plane hit, it was a bomb. It exploded, blew the popcorn fire insulation off the metal components, and now you have jet fuel burning. I think Pete had said it was like 1,800 degrees jet fuel burns at.
Yeah, 1890 Fahrenheit. Yes.
All right, so almost 1,900 degrees. Well, we know that metal, all you need is like 1,100 degrees for it to start failing and sagging. So that's what happened here. You had, direct flame impingement on these joists. They start failing. They estimated that each floor had a dead load of about 2 million pounds. So once they started the upper floor sagged and started failing. You get into physics, which I don't know that much about, but it's basically 2 million pounds now traveling at a speed, bangs into the next floor, and it just kept going, all the way down, and hence you had 210-story buildings that we thought could never collapsed. So you're never going to. I doubt you're ever going to see this type of construction again, or if it is, they're going to have a different type of joiners and fire retardant in that type of construction. I mean, I know the Freedom Tower was not built, that's like a bomb shelter the way they built that as compared to the way this was built.
The first 20 floors are literally a bomb shelter.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's so again, this is just, we're talking about truss and here it is, open web bar joists. Right. And when you're looking at it, I mean, it's not really that, that's substantial. I mean, again, it's designed and engineered to carry an expansive load, and the more weight you put on it, I believe it makes it rigid and stronger. But again, not designed to take any type of flame impingement, and that's what you have on 11. Yeah, and of course the total collapse.
Right. So somebody described it once as like 110 Kmarts collapsing on top of each other, and it was like each floor was like an acre, in size.
Wow, right.
So, a tremendous amount of force, which explains when we were digging through it, for the next whatever it was, 7 months, 8 months, why the forces that were there were, ground everything up to nothing,
They pulverized everything. I was reading that it was a 10-inch compaction ratio, which means that I don't know how high the ceilings were in that, but it was all compacted into 10 inches every floor.
Yeah,
which is nothing.
It was amazing. I remember one night with you guys down there, and do you remember the guy with the grappler? He was digging stuff up, but he was digging stuff up below grade. They were working on the slurry. It was early. They were working on the slurry wall and stuff.
Yep.
Still leaking. And we were going through it as he picked the stuff up and put it down. We'd go through it, And I remember picking up some of the papers because that was all that was left was papers, right? And they were so he's picking this stuff from like 25 feet below grade, putting it on the ground. And then I picked up one of the papers because we were just raking through it, and it's from a law firm on like the 91st floor.
And it's below grade.
And it's 25 feet below grade.
Yeah, man.
You just go, this is incredible. I mean, it's just like the forces that were involved were just, you can't get your head around them,
Nah. Mm-hmm. Nope. And I forget, I don't remember what it was, the speed of the collapse. I can't remember what I read it somewhere. I don't know, Pete, can you look
10
that
seconds.
9 meters per second squared. Is that what Kevin Malone's saying in the chat?
And they said you'd never use algebra again after you got out of
Look at that, Kevin Malone. Look at you.
He's the only one that can understand it.
Yeah.
He's your physicist in the chat.
There you go.
Yeah, Kevin Malone, physicist.
So we have some more time. Where do you want to go next, Dennis?
Well, if you want to do the gypsum roof, you can do that, or we can wrap it up. Whatever you want to do.
Let's do the gypsum roof, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. Well, gypsum roofs is 106, Pete.
Coming up. Here you go, Cap.
All right.
Hey, that's us.
I think that is you. That's you, Kevin, there on the left. Anyway, I think.
Okay. Well, basically, this everyone we talked. This was the Coke building, correct?
Right.
Yeah, that's a Coke building.
All right. So this was a building that was going to be demolished that we were fortunate enough to drill on, and so we went up to do some operations and give guys practice cutting, and lo and behold, we start cutting, and you see all this white powdered dust. Well, if you don't know what that means, you're going to know now. That means you have a gypsum roof. And basically, what is a gypsum roof? Well, you know what your wallboard is in your house, sheetrock? That's a gypsum board. So these roofs are made with, preformed. Well, it can be done two ways. They can either be preformed gypsum panels to different depths, 2-3 inches, 1 inch, or they do wet pours, where it's formed and they'll do a wet pour of gypsum. The whole thing is there's not much structural stability to the gypsum. So, in the past, we would get up on these roofs and we cut them, right, Dennis? I mean,
Yep. Yep, absolutely. There's actually a good picture of what you're talking about. Slide 108, a couple of slides up.
Okay.
You know what?
So that,
yeah, so
right,
that's,
so
that's a cross
there you
section.
see, right. So it's the gypsum with like a fiberglass, insulation in it, the fibers. But as far as structure, I mean, it's not. Maybe you find some like chicken wire but you're not going to see like big rebars or anything like you would in a concrete building. So again, they're rigid. They're rigid. And on top of the gypsum, there is going to be roofing material. You might find a wet tar roof, or you might find the rubberized roof on top of it to keep the water out, because any type of water permeation on this makes it even less stable, which again we found out, and I think we brought it with our article to FDNY's attention. Correct?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
These when they're not compromised. Now you found out. I mean, right now, if a chief knows that there's a gypsum roof, he's ordering everybody off that roof. Get off, because the chance of collapse is pretty substantial. Now, if you can go, what's the next picture with the glue?
The clay. Just go to the next slide. Just go to the next slide, Pete.
Okay,
is that what you're looking for, Hank?
Yeah, well, right. So what we found, and we only found this out through drilling. We got up to the roof and we started, cutting what we thought was a gypsum roof, and we're like, how come we're not getting any white powder?
White powder, right?
Right. There's no white powder happening, but we get all of this clay gummy material that's coming up. And do we have the picture with this saw with the shroud with the?
Yeah, it's the next. It's one slide back.
Previous.
One slide back.
Previous right here.
All right.
Yep.
Right. So, I mean, the saw, it was actually, this stuff was getting up in the shroud of the saw and gumming it up. I mean, it was still rotating, but it was like, we're like, what the hell do we have here?
Yeah.
And what we realized was the roofing material had been compromised. So water was leaking down into the gypsum, and it was just making it like this soft material. And probably the roofing material, you know how we talk about with the carpeting saves you with with the joints,
allowed you to walk on it.
Right. So the rubberized roof was really just saving the whole roof from collapsing. So we realized, you know what, the water permeating into a gypsum roof really compromises any rigidity and any stability that it has. So that's another reason why we don't want guys getting up on the top, because there's always a good chance that over the years you're going to have water permeating somewhere in that roof and compromising these gypsum boards.
You know what, Hank? The manufacturers have to know this, because I think I told you this, that myself, Kenny DeTata, and Chris Isa went up to Syosset to a factory, a warehouse kind of building that they were tearing down, and it had a gypsum roof, and they wanted Chris was the guy who said, let's photograph this, So Kenny grabs me and we go up there, and the panels on the underside of this particular roof, it didn't have the ceilings weren't too high, so you could see them pretty well. I have the photographs somewhere, but I couldn't find them for this. But they actually had stenciled on there, if wet, stay off of roof, or something like that.
Really?
So in other words, the
That's
manufacturer
crazy.
who was installed knew it,
Yeah.
So again,
So
it's just something you've got to be aware of, like what you're saying.
Right. So now we go up there with a truck company, 2 truck companies. You're going to have 4 or 5 guys, beefalos, every 200 pounds plus 100 pounds of gear in a concentrated area, and now you're putting a cut in it. The next thing you're taking the express down to the fire.
Right.
So again, we were on the job how many years before we?
Yeah, we never saw it. Yep.
Right? I mean, when I went to the squads, I had 19 years. So I had 20 years on the job before I found this out, and I don't think anybody knew it. We only found out not because we're so smart, but again, we talk about the drilling, and when you do stuff like drilling and everything, that's when you find things like this out, or you find, when it's too late, when it's an actual fire and somebody ends up getting killed. So this is the time you want to find out about it, And when you see stuff like this, don't keep it a secret. Let the chiefs know. Let the information get disseminated out to the battalion and the job. so
Right.
everybody's aware. You know.
Without a doubt.
So, okay.
Hey, Pete, go to slide 112. 112.
You got it.
So this is what it looks like from underneath. Okay, so when you're looking at it, these are what the panels look like. I mean, there's no lightweight truss here or anything. It's just roof panels installed, right? And
Well,
you'll.
what? I mean, Jazz, I just wanted to say, because people can go, how do they sit up there? If you see those like strips, those are like what they call metal purlins, and it's just like a metal track and that runs across the I-beams, and then the gypsum panels will lay into those, and that's what keeps them up there.
Yeah, that's right. Pete, go to 114. All right, there's another better picture of that. Okay, just a better quality picture of the panels that are interlocked that are sitting up there, and like Hank said, purlins from one beam to the next. And 103. Go to 103.
Okay.
Sorry about this jumping around, guys.
No. It's so quite
All
all
right.
right.
This is a nice looking building that's probably about 50 years old. Okay. It's got a nice veneer on it, but underneath all of this is an old building. This is in my town, and this has got a gypsum roof on it. So, and it's very apparent from underneath what you just saw in the two previous slides. That's exactly what the roof of this building looks like. So they're out there, they're everywhere. They're actually in this little dead end street. There's a couple of buildings with this type of roofing system. So again, it's another legacy gift from the past that's out there that, we have to deal with today, and that, young firefighters today are going to have to deal with for a long time to come, as long as these buildings still exist.
So you say, why are we saying about the white powder and the gummy and everything? Because this is the scenario. You might not know that building has a gypsum roof, and now it's 3 a.m. You're going in. There's a smoke condition in the building, so when you look up, you're not seeing gypsum. All you're seeing is smoke. So now that the roof man's up there, he's laying the saw into the roof. That's where it comes in. You're the roof man. You're seeing the white powder, or you're seeing that gum up in there. You know what? You're on a gypsum roof. Immediate notification. Get the guys off the roof. You get off the roof.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Crickets. What's the matter?
Hey.
I'm listening. I remember all that stuff.
Well,
listen, I'm short and sweet. I'm making the point. Like I said,
that's it. Yeah.
It's good when we find this stuff out before the fire, but that's not always the case. So that's why that's where these tidbits come in. Because if you're fat, dumb, and happy up on that roof, and you're just cutting away with this white powder, and you're thinking it's, oh, who knows what it is? I guess it's some type of roof. And the next thing you know, like I say, you're taking the express down.
Well, plus we said that they, if you had a 2.5 going into it, which you would probably, and they start hitting it from underneath,
bust it up,
right? and you got to cut through there. Now it's getting into there, and that could make things worse too, obviously.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They don't use this anymore, or they don't use it anymore.
I think they do. I think they do use it, but not in this application.
Yeah. They might have. I think they went from purlings to like interlocking, like where it's like a tongue and groove. But and like I said, there's still they do wet pours too, where it's actually like you do concrete, but they'll do. I guess they form it underneath.
one pour, right?
Yeah.
It's like a monolithic pour, right? And I guess I don't know how they form it underneath. Well, I've never seen it, but I do know that I've heard of wet pours. But again, when it's dry, you got the same situation.
Will they ever pour that over Q decking?
I don't know whether they might pour it over Q decking and put a roof, a waterproofing, like I say, either a wet mop or a rubber torch down on top of it.
Right. So now if you're getting white powder and sparks, get off the roof.
Right.
Exactly.
At least with the Q decking, you still have, unless you've got a real roaring fire underneath. Like Dennis said before, sometimes you might go in, maybe you have a localized fire or something. It doesn't, we don't want you to think you got to go running off of every one of these roofs. It's a coordinated thing. The interior forces, hey, we got a heavy fire condition, or we have a medium smoke condition, not a lot of heat. Because you still got to get up to that roof. Maybe there's, maybe usually on these type of things, you're not going to find a skylight. Maybe there is, but you might find a scuttle, and you might be able to open the scuttle or force the scuttle open. But again, it comes with coordination from inside, outside, and you being known, knowing what's up there if you have to cut. So, you know, it's
yeah, and
the
again,
whole-
communication is what's really important. Is that, you know, especially the people in the remote positions, you know, the first people inside, first guys on the roof, you know, up until this building was renovated into a hardware store, it had a number of other different occupancies, and nobody picked up for a long. It's only until about 5 years ago that this was picked up as a gypsum roof. So it existed in this town for many years. I mean, it wasn't until I mentioned it to Dave Marshall, the chief, that this is a hazardous problem, that, you know, they took action on it. Because nobody identified it, nobody recognized it, which is what we're talking about tonight. I mean, this is a topic you could talk on and on for, you know, most building construction classes at fire academies are at least 8 nights, you know, 8 nights of 2 to 3 hours, you know. So it's, you know, this is, we just scratched the surface of a few things here, but this is supposed to be a kitchen drill. So that's all, you know, you're basically talking about a few things.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. You know what really pops to my head when we talk about communication is that since we've been doing this, you know, Cup of Joe and some Fuego, and I'm getting in pictures and videos from all over the country, especially in these rural areas, you know, where you say communication is key. A lot of times there'll be one unit on the scene with like 2 or 3 guys for a long time before other guys get it. So this has got to be part of the process, man. I mean, like, they'll be sitting there for a while before they get it. You know, I don't know how long before a ladder company comes in, but there'll be an engine on scene with 2 guys or 3 guys for a while.
There might only be one ladder company in the whole county, you know, in rural areas, you know. So it's, listen, that is a completely different task. I mean, you know, you talk about wildland firefighting or rural firefighting, especially where there is no water supply, you know, where you have to bring the water with you. You know, you have to bring tankers. That is a completely different animal than what we've dealt with our whole careers. You know, you got to have a lot of respect for those people. It's a very difficult thing to do, you know, and it takes a lot of organization to do it too.
I think until we went to the shows, I went to the shows, I did not you know, you see some guy throwing water in the window and you're like, you know, coward or whatever. But again, like I've said this before, like you could sell me now on what Kev just said. You know, you show up with 2 guys, a tank of water, it's ripping out of everywhere because you just got there. It's 10 minutes. By the time you got there, you're a volley or whatever it is. You know, you're not running through the front door. You know what I'm saying? So I get, you know, you only have X amount of water. You only have X amount of guys. So there is, you know, again, you have to know what your area is. We kill it with manpower, right? You can snuff out a fire with 25 guys without any water in FDNY.
Yeah.
But manpower and 24-inch water mains and a height of 200.
Yeah, right.
But that's what we need. That's what you need in New York. I mean, you know, but it's definitely, you know, when you go around the country, like I know when I met my buddies down there in North Carolina, you know, in Concord and Odell, I had never seen a tanker operation. You know, it's not even just pulling the tanker up. You know, they're setting up the pool to dump the water in, and it's a whole big operation that they have to do. And then they're shuffling tankers to get, you know, water into the pool. So, I mean, like you say, you guys, they got to get a lot of respect for, you know, for getting, just to be able to get water. So, different ball game.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yep.
So are we getting the hook now, Pete? Because I know it's getting late. We only got, you know, about another half the show to go, but I don't think everybody wants to stay up till midnight.
No, we're definitely getting the hook. We're getting to the shout outs, boys.
Round 2. All right.
Yeah, that was great though, guys. Really nice.
We'll have to
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Hankel. Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Well,
Franklin,
like I said, I'm only
senior dude,
the color
Franklin
commentator.
Molay.
The captain's the main man. I'm just the color commentator on this one, but I enjoyed it.
He is the main man.
Always been the main man. Yep.
Yep.
Dennis, you wanted to do a shout out, or do you?
Oh
want
yeah. Thanks for reminding
us, or what do you want?
I think this whole show has been an old school tip of the day, but if you got one, you can throw it out.
I got one thing I want to say, and it ties into what we're saying here. You know, we talk bowstring and open web bar joist and the different things in the fire service. If like Dennis is, if you really want to be a good firefighter, you have to be a student of firefighting. And if we don't study the fires in the past that have taken firefighters' lives, then we're destined to repeat that down the road. So, you know, when if there's been a fatality, try to find out as much as you can. Was it the building construction? Was it a water problem? Was it, an error somewhere? Was it communications? But, we want to find out what it is, let everybody know what it is. And this is not to point fingers at anybody. This is so people can learn and stay alive. Because, like I said, if you don't, you're going to end up down the road repeating the same thing's going to happen, and there's going to be more firefighter fatalities.
Yep. I hope maybe some of this information tonight will save a couple of lives. You never know. Somebody takes something with them, plants a seed in their head, and maybe they think next time before, if they do something.
Do it. That's why we're here doing it.
Yep.
Nice.
So, okay.
Great work, guys.
A tip or a shout out?
I had a shout out if you don't mind.
Absolutely. You're the man.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi to my friend Jimmy McNamara. He's a friend of both Hank and myself. We worked with him at the Nassau Fire Academy for many years. Jimmy runs a fire science program out in Arizona. He's a retired fire marshal from Nassau County, and he relocated out to God's country, and he's got a nice little gig out there. So to Jimmy, and more importantly, to all of Jimmy's young students in the fire science program, listen to my man Jimmy. He knows what he's talking about. Okay. Good luck, Jimmy. Take care, guys.
And listen to these two guys. What do you got, Ruffy?
All right, so I got another guy. I hope I say his last name right. John Vaeth, V-A-E-T-H. So he took over you remember the stack fishing tournament they used to have in Montauk? So he took that over a couple of years ago, and he started the Fight for Firefighters Foundation. So what these guys do is they build ramps. They make members' houses, making members' houses handicap accessible with the money that they raise from the fishing tournament. So due to COVID last year, they were obviously they didn't get much done. So he wanted me to give these guys a little shout out. Check it out, Pete. We have the website. I think it's fightforfirefightersfoundation.com. They also are on Facebook. So the tournament this year is September 13th, so check them out. They're going to have a 50-50 raffle set up, and you can also participate online with that. And the drawing will be on the day of the tournament, so that's in September. They also build ramps for kids with disabilities, and it's been awesome to give back. So these guys are doing a great job, all firemen from the job. So check it out. Again, it's fightforfirefightersfoundation.com.
Great job, brothers. Very nice.
Sweet. Hank, you want to throw out anything, Hank? Down at the Del Boca Vista, you got a little bingo party coming up. What do you got?
I'm not there right now. I'm actually up in the north part of the country. I'm in Indiana, so seeing how the other half live. But
nice.
No. We have. You know what? You should spend some of your shekels. You can come down to Del Boca Vista in the winter when there's about 50 of the brothers down there, and you can experience old school tip of the days and ball breaking like it really should be. You could, we might even find a place to host you.
Can you throw me a couple of, paycheck to paycheck here, bud? On a fixed income,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Which one of the 20 are you talking about?
He's right. You guys would fit right in down there.
All right, let's have it. Well, we're coming down anyway because I talked to. After the shows are over, I promised my man Jose down there that we would come down. So we'll 100%. Do something down in Florida when it's colder, like maybe November, somewhere around there. Oh, wait, where roofies be hunting. So maybe October. We'll go down in October. What do you think?
September.
Just don't make it the first.
Maybe we'll go in September. Maybe September.
I got one more shout out. I forgot. This is from again. I don't know if I'm saying the last name right. Matt Pronovost, Pronovost. How would you say that? Pronovost.
Pronovost, yeah.
So his old man is it's his birthday today. Paul, he's 28-year veteran from the Thomaston Fire Department, celebrating his 58th birthday. Currently our senior dude, and a huge fan of the show. Thank you, brother. So I just want to make sure I get him on there too.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
How about you, Kev? You good?
We got. I'm trying to get in touch with the Tunnels to Towers because I was in Proby School with Steven Silla. We worked with him, And we're coming out with a World Trade Center shirt, and we're going to send the proceeds over the tunnel to Towers. But I'm trying to get in touch with them. Look for that coming out real soon. It's a really nice shirt. And we'll send some shekels over the tunnels to Towers, honoring the 20th anniversary.
All right.
Nice.
And, I got two quick ones from the chat, actually. One's from Anthony Gonzo is asking if we mind shouting out a brother from Miami who was lost to the big C named Gabe Soto, young guy in his 40s. So shout out to him. Sad. And last but not least, from FL 9 2002, DC Fire lost a brother on Sunday off duty. Rally mid-kiff 3 from the third from Rescue 3 in DC, only 33 years old. So
That sucks.
Sucks, man.
Rest in peace, brothers.
Didn't we lose a brother like couple of days ago in Connecticut?
We've shouted him out in New Haven.
Oh, New Haven. Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did shout it? Okay. I remember seeing something about that. So yeah. And I think the other fellow that was made it was burnt, but I think he's doing better.
Yeah, he's doing better.
Good to hear.
Alrighty.
All right, so what do we got next week? You got somebody lined up, Ruffy? Are we going to keep it on a down low for now?
Yeah, it's on the down low. I talked to the captain about it to see if he knew who he was, but he's in his 80s, so he's from the 60s. Some busy company, so it should be good.
Yeah.
But I'm going to talk to him this weekend to make sure the logistics is all right.
And he knows how to use a computer. All right.
Well, his son's going to help out. I hope so. We'll see.
Is that for Thursday or Monday, Louis?
That's for Thursday.
Okay, and what about Monday? Do we know what we're doing?
Monday we're coming to your house, Pete.
Oh,
Yep.
cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
we're going to have a little gefilte fish with your in-laws.
Beautiful. What is that?
Some
Velvet.
lox. What is that? Yeah.
I don't know what we're doing Monday yet.
Yeah. All right, Pete. Take it away.
Okay. Well, guys, you should be listening to this. If you're watching it, also listen to it on iTunes Podcast, Spotify, or wherever fine audio podcasts are found. Like, subscribe, and share there, guys. Come on. It's free. You know that secret word that firemen love.
For me.
Also, guys, youtube.com/Getting Salty Experience. Dudes, like, subscribe, and share. Again, it's free. The firefighters like that, right? That's what I've been told.
They love free, bro.
Head over to Instagram if you're on there, and head over to @SaltyDog Inc., where you find Mr. Refrano's fire photos and last-minute info of the show. Guys, if you want to get some cool firefighter apparel, mugs, drinking vessels of all sorts, accessories, so on and so forth, go over to gettingsaltyapparel.com. Thank you to everyone who supported us in the super chat tonight. Also, guys, if you have a question for the show, email us at gettingsaltyexperience@gmail.com and keep the emails coming to koobspodcast@gmail.com for all the Cup of Joe and Fuego stuff. That's helmet cam footage of your rigs, photos of your rigs, photos of your kitchen tables, all that sort of good stuff to koobspodcast@gmail.com. Last but not least, oh my God, every week this gets longer. Facebook, guys, if you're on there, check out the Getting Salty fans page where these guys are incredulous and make tons of fun of us, but we love them anyway. And it's just great all day long. I'm getting buzzed on Facebook, like all these great fires and bullshit going back and forth. It's a great page. Check it out. Getting Salty fans. That's it.
And if you want to send me any pictures of your old lady to Coop's podcast, I won't show anybody.
No problem.
Between us. I won't show Louis.
What are you talking?
Yeah.
I like your style.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Definitely.
Send them away.
Definitely.
All right. I want to thank Cat Murphy and
Always a
Senior
pleasure
Dude,
seeing you guys.
Frank Millay. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it.
Stop with the Frank.
My pleasure, Ralph.
Cap, as usual, thanks for giving me a shot in special ops. I owe you my career. I say that every time.
Yeah, you guys were great.
I appreciate it.
You guys were both awesome. So thank you. Thanks for coming for the ride.
Yeah, it's a great ride. And thanks for Hank for taking us under the wing.
My pleasure.
And that's it. All right, fellas. We'll see you at the next one.
right.
Stay low and go.
Take
All
care,
right.
guys.
Be safe.
Have a good night. We'll see you at the big one.
Later, boys.